What's up, and welcome back to another kind of funny in review rewatch. This time we are doing Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Of course, I'm Tim Geddes, and I'm joined by Pixel Circus's own Sage Ryan.
Oh, hello. My greatest nightmare is exactly the line, make 10 men feel like 100.
Yeah. I had a feeling that was going to resonate with you in a particularly icky way. We also have the saddest boy that I know personally, Barrett Courtney.
What is she proposing?
Let the girl speak.
And rounding out our group today for what is sure to be an all-timer, the one and only Anthony Carboni.
What's up, everybody? You know, the strongest stars have hearts made of kyber.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this crew is the strongest crew to review this film.
It is.
I know.
It is.
I know we're all going to have a great time reviewing this film, Rogue One, everyone's favorite Star Wars story here on this panel.
I cannot believe that after all of these years, everybody, here I am, just young, innocent Tim Geddes, okay? I'm out here on these streets just trying to get by, just trying to do my thing. I have to do a full in-review series with a bunch of buffoons, you know? Sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong, but it was a disaster. And here I am, the lone wolf, still doing this damn stuff. Everyone else was like, I'm done with Star Wars. They're all fucking gone. I get a new crew. I get this beautiful team here. I assembled it over the course of 2 hours, just like this movie does. And we have this beautiful squad together, right? And I'm like, oh, I can't wait to talk about this movie that I enjoy so much. And then the cracks start to show. And then I start realizing, oh, wait. Barrett Courtney is not alone. And I'm about to have to do a rewatch and talk about this movie with people
Tim?
that don't like it.
I enjoy the film.
Who at this table dislikes 9 out of 10 Star Wars we watch? Who might it be?
That's what I'm saying.
Might it be you, Tim? Might it be you, Tim?
Maybe.
That's what I'm saying.
Maybe you're the crazy one here, Tim.
It's
So
so
maybe-
hard to be just a little Tim.
Maybe taste how it feels.
I enjoy this film, Tim.
Good.
I am
and I
with you.
can't wait to talk to you about this, Carbone. I can't wait to talk about everybody. That's the whole fun of this show, In Review, where we rank, review, and recap different movie franchises. Of course, sometimes we do rewatches of those when it makes sense. And right now it makes sense because Star Wars Andor is coming out each and every week. And we, this beautiful crew right here, is going to be reacting to those and giving our thoughts over on the Kind of Funny screencast. But this is In Review, where we rank, review, and recap different movie franchises every week on youtube.com/kindoffunny or roosterteeth.com. You can get it as a podcast by searching your favorite podcast service for Kind of Funny in Review, and we'll be right there for you. If you wanted to get the show ad-free and watch live as we record it, you got to go to patreon.com/kindoffunny, just like our Patreon producers Molecule and Fargo Brady have done. Today, we're brought to you by Chime and NZXT gaming monitors, but I'll tell you about that later. Let's get into it. Rogue One, a Star Wars story, released on December 16, 2016, with a runtime of 2 hours and 14 minutes. It was directed by Gareth Edwards, who previously directed the Godzilla movie in 2014.
We like to say that he directed Monster.
And he directed Monster as well.
We like to say that he directed Monster.
Led to Godzilla. Here we are. Music by the GOAT, Michael Giacchino, who we will be
Is there a
returning
movie
to.
he has not done music
That's what I'm
for?
saying. He's just too good. He's too powerful.
It's
You
actually-
go to Disneyland, and it's just Michael Giacchino music everywhere, whether it's Pixar, Star Wars, or Marvel.
The IRS says that if your movie costs over a certain amount of money, it's compulsory that you have Michael Giacchino do your score.
Yeah.
If you want to get the tax breaks associated with making a film.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then over time, they give you your own project. Next week for In Review, we're going to be doing Werewolf by Night. I couldn't be more excited. That's Michael Giacchino's directorial debut.
I'm so excited.
So let's go. Very cool. This one had a budget of $265 million and a box office of a cool $1.085 billion.
Did fine.
Wow. It did fine. It did fine. Let's start with one, Sage Ryan. What did you think of Star Wars Rogue One?
Okay, so I had not seen Rogue One since it came out. I watched it the first time and I said, that's quite enough. And it was perfectly fine. I don't hate the movie. I just enjoy almost all other Star Wars more. So there's so much Star Wars for me to watch. If I'm going to sit down and I'm going to watch a Star Wars, I'm going to watch one of the ones that like does the thing to my heart that Star Wars is supposed to do that Rogue One has just never done for me. upon this rewatch, I will admit I liked it better than the first time. I had a more enjoyable experience, and maybe that's because there's so much more Star Wars media that it's not about this like one-to-one direct comparison anymore that I think Rogue One had for me as it was coming up with these new sequels, and we had these other cast of leading characters that were coming forward. And a lot of people were also hating that new cast of characters. They were hating Rey, and they were hating all of these things. They were hating Kylo as a villain, and I love those characters so much that I think the comparison also might have killed it because I was so like attached to defending this new generation of characters that people would not get on board for in the beginning. So it was a choose at the time. And now that I don't feel like I have to choose, I think the film is fine.
There we go. Carboni, what about you?
I enjoy this movie. I enjoyed it when it came out. I enjoy it now. I think it did a lot of things for changing things tonally for Star Wars and getting us to the point that we're at now where we can be a little bit more flexible with what Star Wars is. I love the idea of doing a classic war movie in the Star Wars universe. You know, we had talked about how we had never seen really a lot of boots on the ground before this. And so it was nice to see sort of that and the scrappy rebellion coming together, and all of this stuff was very nice to see. And upon rewatching it, I really did. I liked it just as much as I did beforehand. But it did make me think, like, it's interesting that the first series we're getting about a character from this show is Cassian, because I love so many of the characters from this film. And all I was really thinking the whole way through is like, I hope some of these other characters get the same treatment that Cassian's getting, because there are so many cool characters that we did not get to dive deep into in this film. But I loved it.
Barrett Courtney.
We've talked about it time and time again because I was partially a part of the original Star Wars Rogue One in review when we did it back in the 2019 studio, Tim, if you remember, way back when. So I've talked about this before, but I had the unfortunate timing where at the time I would go home around the holidays to go hang out with family, and a lot of my family's into a good old Star Wars, right? And just how it kind of happened to turn out where, you know, I had different groups of people who wanted to go see the new Star Wars with me, in particular Star Wars Rogue One. And I saw Rogue One 3 times in 1 week. And because of that, I overanalyzed the absolute shit out of it. And even on first watch, fell asleep in that second act. And I fell asleep in that second act every single time I saw that in theaters. So yeah, I overanalyzed this a lot. I've thought about this a lot. We talked about it in our Andor kind of watch, I think on the first episode, covering the first 3 episodes, that Andor is less plot and more character. And I think when you have something like Rogue One, that's what I want. And Rogue One, unfortunately, as a movie is more plot and less character. But the point of Rogue One is to get you into these characters that are boots on the ground. Like, I won't deny what Carboni's bringing up of, like, the kind of opening the floodgates of bringing in more of this darker tone for Star Wars, opening up to getting series like Andor. And, yeah, I think rewatching it cemented for me that what I've been saying for years, story-wise, I think everything this movie screams at me is that it should have been a series. I do understand that at the time they didn't have a Disney Plus. They didn't like other than, you know, Disney XD, which is where they were putting up Star Wars Rebels. Like, they didn't have really a platform to do that. I like the premise of this movie a lot. I think it's a disservice to it that we got. It's a 2-hour movie, and I think because of that, a lot of character arcs are wrapped up in the first hour, which is insane to me because it's a team. Like, rewatching it, you're like, oh, Riz Ahmed is barely a character in this movie. Like, oh, right, like, but he's part of the team. But okay, and so they try to like bring up these really cool character arcs. But then they have to wrap them up within an hour because the last hour of the movie is the third act on Scarif and stuff. So it frustrates me. I've said it a lot before. Star Wars Rogue One is the Halo Reach of the Star Wars universe. Halo Reach had the advantage of being a 9-hour game where you kind of know and understand that all of these characters that you're either playing as or playing along with are going to die because of, you know, the implications of Halo 1. But you get enough time to fall in love with those characters and learn about them that you kind of forget about that. And then the first death on that team is not even the final mission where you like where everybody is like you know, doing their final stand on Reach. It comes out of nowhere and it's this shock where you're like kind of pulled out where you're like, oh yeah, everybody's got to die. When you do that in a 2-hour movie, that's always on your mind. So you don't get time to really like forget about that and just have a moment with falling in love with these characters. In 2 hours, you're always just thinking like, all right, well, they're dying in an hour and a half. Cool. So that's we'll get into it more specifics, but those are still my general thoughts on this movie.
I want you to know that I fell asleep at the same point last night.
No.
Tim,
what about you?
It's such a short second act too, and I don't know how they make me fall asleep in it every time.
I fell
Tim,
asleep at the same point last night.
I have
Yes,
never
Tim,
fallen
what do you
asleep
think?
during a single moment of this movie. I love this movie. I do not think it's perfect. I do not think it's the best Star Wars, but I think that it does some of Star Wars better than any other Star Wars has ever done. I think that it is more plot heavy than character heavy. And I do think that's a disservice to this movie in particular because of the way that they've set up the characters. And I think that the more egregious flaw of this film isn't so much I wish we had more time with these characters. I wish they did different things with the time they were given. There's certain scenes in this movie that I'd like the whole memory monster situation. It's bad. It's really bad.
No.
And like it's funny and it's going to be fun to talk about, but it's like the setup to get there was just not worth the end result, which meant that we got less time with these characters. And I think that to Barrett's point, Riz Ahmed's character is barely a character. And that was kind of the thing he did the most. It was be involved with that scene, which I thought was
Or gullet
big
slander in my house. I can't.
You're going to get a little of it. You're going to get a little of it
Yeah,
because
just
you're
a
also
little
going to
bit.
get a lot of praise for like, I love the space fight in this. I think is up there with the best of them that we've ever had. I love how long it is. I love how involved it is with the multi kind of sections of like the different strategies of crashing it into the shield, like breaking it all down so that the people on the ground floor could do things. I love it. I thought it was expertly done. And it just is unfortunate because the way that the film ends and like the character choices and like the big epic sacrifices in the moment where like one by one the entire team dying, I think is done immaculately. I think it's so well done. It is exciting. It is emotional. But the moment you start thinking about it, it's like, well, why do I care about these characters? And they don't really give you many good reasons to. But I think at the end of it, they do a good job of making me care in the moment that it matters most. So it is this weird thing where it's like, yes, if this was a series that allowed us to kind of get deeper into these characters and care more about all of them and made some wiser choices, the end would feel even better. But I think that stuff doesn't take down the overall experience to me of what Rogue One is, which I think is a excellent look at how do we handle something people have thought about from Star Wars for a long time. And granted, this is even a different time we're talking about. This is the second Disney film that we got from Star Wars. And at this point in time, we had only had pure goodness with the revival of Star Wars. It was like people are stoked that Rogue One's coming back. People are stoked about everything. It's like we didn't get Last Jedi yet, right? Like the world was not split in two, and everyone's kind of like, all right, we like Star Wars. That's kind of the assumption. And for this to come out, I think that they did a good job of balancing, and people might disagree with me about this. They will, but I like how much fan service there's in this, how much Easter egg stuff. Giving us the Vader hallway scene, like it's an all-time fucking great. And I know people can look at me like, I would rather people just talk all the time and not have action and stuff. It's like, cool. I like that too, but I also like Darth Vader with the fucking lightsaber.
I like action. I like action, but not when
Who
it
said that to you?
Dude,
I like action, but I like action that doesn't belittle the rest of the actual cast of this movie that this movie is about. The last thing I want to say that I have in my notes here at the very top alongside my Andor note is the story of this movie had the potential to be as deep and beautiful as its visuals are, but it is so frustratingly surface level. Because visually, I think this is still top notch. There's so many shots in here that we're going to talk about. It's just like, holy shit, that's insane. That's so cool. And I don't think they've really done again since.
Yeah. So there you go.
All
Those
right.
are our thoughts. We're about to get into the plot. We're about to do it all. But before we do that, here's a word from our sponsors. Shout out to NZXT Canvas gaming monitors. We are huge fans of NZXT here at KindaFunny, and I gotta say, these monitors, they're Andy Cortez approved, Kevin Coelho approved, and Tim Geddes approved because of their sweet 1440p resolution with 165 hertz refresh rate and 1 millisecond response hits. That sweet spot for gamers due to the balance of picture and performance. They're available in 27-inch and 32-inch curved displays, variable refresh rate support for all of the major GPUs. They provide an excellent gaming experience for any game genre. You can get the monitor just alone, you can get it with a stand, or you can get it with some pretty cool mounts. There's built-in software support with NZXT Cam that lets you control all your monitor settings directly on your PC. No need to mess with the clunky hardware menus to lock in your desired settings. They thought of it all. It's sold exclusively on nzxt.com. You can learn more about the NZXT Canvas gaming monitors at nzxt.co/kindafunny. That's nzxt.co/kindafunny. Shout out to Chime for sponsoring this episode. What's the first thing you do when you wake up? Is it checking up on your credit score? I don't think so. At Chime, that's exactly what they do. With their secured Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card, you can start to build credit with your own money. All of this with no annual fees, large security deposits, or credit checks to apply. You can start your credit journey with Chime. Sign up takes only 2 minutes and doesn't affect your credit score. You can get started at chime.com/kfgames. That's chime.com/kfgames. The Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card is issued by Stride Bank N.A. pursuant to a license from Visa, USA Chime checking account, and $200 qualifying direct deposit required to apply for the secured Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card. Regular on-time payment history can have a positive impact on your credit score. Impact to score may vary, and some users' scores may not improve. Out-of-network ATM withdrawal fees may apply, except at MoneyPass ATMs in a 7-Eleven or any Allpoint or Visa Plus Alliance ATM. Get your credit journey started with Chime. Sign up takes only 2 minutes, doesn't affect your credit score. Get started at chime.com/kfgames. And now that we're back, Carboni, it is on you to hit us with the plot of Rogue One.
The story given to us by Gundog's own Gary Whitta, and of course John Knoll, creator of Photoshop, and then screenplay by Tony Gilroy, who is now show running on Andor, and Chris Weitz. We open on a long time ago, but hey, we ain't got no different crawl. This is where this movie starts thinking, what does a Star Wars movie look like if it's not part of the main Skywalker saga? And I think some of the style guide stuff that's been changed here is very interesting. And I remember watching and seeing no crawl in the beginning of this movie and thinking it was so weird, but also so dope. And like immediately getting like location like cards for planets, like it just the way it was just changing the Star Wars style guide was really great. By the way, Gary Whitta says not only did he write a crawl for this film, he wrote 2 crawls for this film before they decided that these movies would be crawlless. Isn't that interesting?
It really is. And I love that not only was it crawlless, it starts off with that alarming ass, like just sound, like the rising strings, and you're in space. It's so alarming. It's like, motherfuckers, we're different. But I also love that they had the balls to 20 minutes later actually do a like the Rogue One like title splash with like the heroic Star Wars music.
Yes.
And I was like, y'all got to do both. You had your cake and ate it too. Good for you, Rogue One.
So we start as all good Star Wars start on Iceland. And we've got Jyn running from a ship that she sees. We see her parents calling Saw Gerrera, who will, of course, come back later and was introduced in the Clone Wars. And we see that her family is in hiding. Her father, Galen, says, hey, just remember, whatever I do it to protect you. Tell me you understand. And she says, I understand.
He lies.
Says, he lies.
She lies.
She lies, yeah.
She says, I understand. She does not.
She does not understand. The whole movie is about her not understanding. He says, I love you, Stardust. And we see Krennic and the Death Troopers. I love Death Troopers.
Death
yeah.
Troopers
How
are
could
dope,
you
but even
not?
before they get on the planet, the shot, it's a very Star Trek-y shot, specifically like the new Star Trek movies, where you see their ship coming through the kind of like asteroid ring. That shot alone, I immediately put it on my notes of like, the cinematography in here is just some of the best and just what they pull off here. But also, the Death Troopers are sick as hell.
Yeah. Cinematography, of course, by Greg Fraser, who is absolutely amazing. And they used a lot of new technology on this movie. This was the first movie where this was pre-volume, obviously. They don't have any of the LED stuff that we have now. But what they did use for Gareth and Greg was iPads in a room that had AR positioning. And they would set up ships and planets. And they would move this iPad through and tell the animators, okay, we want to move this here. We want this shot to come in like this. And so they would previs everything, which becomes much more important when we get into these battle scenes. But you can really see how that changed the way just starships appear in this movie and the way camera angles work in space. It's really amazing. I love Krennic and I love the Death Troopers. I like that the Death Troopers are human, but whenever they speak, it's like this squelch you can't understand. It's very frightening. And I like Krennic because he's an asshole. Krennic rules so hard.
Ben Mendelsohn, such a good antagonist. And I have a follow-up note later about Ben Mendelsohn that'll tie back to this. But right now, he's such a good antagonist. It's so, like, just he's got that sassy chef's kiss. I'm a sassy bitch, and I'm in charge here. And like, I'm so sorry your wife died. Oh, look, she's back from the dead. What a surprise.
Yeah. Oh, I love that bit. It's like,
that.
It's lonely, I imagine. It's so good, that whole bit. And of course, Lyra and Galen do not want to go back. Galen, he says you'll all live in comfort. Lyra says as hostages, and he says as heroes of the Empire. You're going to live a great life. Really Jin's watching from the high grass as all of this is going down, and Galen. I'm not going to say that Galen isn't a brave guy, but I'm going to say that Lyra is definitely the braver one of the two. And we see this throughout Galen's entire life, where Lyra just refuses to back down. She refuses to lower the blaster.
About Lyra. Is it a wig? I don't know. Wigging Out Without Scarpino. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the second episode of Wigging Out Without Scarpino here on Star Wars Content. My name is Barrett Courtney. I'm joined by Tim Geddes, Sage Ryan, and Anthony Carboni. That's a wig. That's like a really bad wig, right? For Lyra.
Do we think Feline Kane was wearing a wig there, Sage?
I don't know why, but yes.
I mean, looking at these pictures, I'm gonna guarantee it. This is a wig.
That is a wig, but I also don't understand because here's the thing:
they didn't figure out the technology yet, like they did in Andor,
right. But like Star Wars hair is a thing, right? Especially for femme-presenting people in Star Wars, the styles and the designs and the expectations of the galaxy and the culture that they set in place, it communicates something when you see people's hair in Star Wars and something that they use to tell stories on the women in particular. You think of Amidala, right? You think of the classic Leia buns and how iconic these things are. She is giving The Shining for no apparent reason.
Yes, she does have the Shining hair.
It's specifically the Shining hair.
She does have the Shelley Duvall hair. And I'm wondering, in the movie, I wasn't paying as much attention to it. And I thought, maybe it's just dirty hair. Maybe they just wanted her to have dirty, greasy hair. But now that I'm looking at it, particularly like even in her production stills, it do look like a wig, which is interesting because that's not hair you need a wig for. She doesn't have multiple looks in the film.
Right.
She doesn't reappear with different hair.
She shows up to die.
And she just has kind of like long, dark hair.
I don't get it, and I don't know. I mean, there's always the possibility that she was shooting something else and she needed to be blonde at the same time, so that's why they did it. But also, it shouldn't be.
If you're shooting something else at the same time, you're shooting
Star Wars isn't taking the priority. Yeah,
Disney says we don't care what else you're shooting. Cut your hair.
That's the thing. Is like the bangs are supposed to be wispy because they're like greasy. I get it. They're a dirty little family. But like, it looks like there's a total of 4 hairs on the bangs, which looks like a cheap Amazon wig.
Well, and it's weird because Galen is wearing a wig.
It looks great.
And Galen's wig looks pretty good.
And honestly, it makes him look like, I'm gonna say like 5 times hotter. He looks great with that hair.
He does look great with
Anyway,
that hair.
she dies.
I
She
am
gets
mad
shot.
about it.
Yeah, she hella
She
dies.
gets shot and she dies. So
Super dead.
Super dead. Krennic's line here, they have a child, find it. Not find her.
Mhm.
He knows this kid. He's worked with Galen for years. We see a flashback.
You're right. Yeah. He's
Orson
being an
Krennic is
asshole.
ugh. But Jin does not get caught because she knows where to go. Her mother was like, "Do you remember where to go?"
Remember
And the
the
answer
hidey
is,
hole?
you go into the dirty little hole from Lost until
Dirty little family.
Dirty little family goes into a dirty little hole until Saw Gerrera opens up the hole and goes, "Let's go. We got a long ride ahead of us, kid." Star Wars, Rogue One.
Okay, I've got a lot of opinions. I think this scene shouldn't have happened. This whole intro sequence. I think this whole intro sequence shouldn't have happened. Although I think it's an enjoyable scene to watch, I think it benefits the movie zero. I think, first of all, it's a Star Wars pattern that we recognize, right? You have to acknowledge why the main character is the most special boy in the galaxy and why they got orphaned. That's the Star Wars pattern. They have to be an orphan, and they do have to be, unfortunately, the most special boy in the galaxy. And at this time, that's Jyn Erso. But think about it this. We open instead on Jyn Erso in a prison cell. We know we're doing a Suicide Squad assembly at some point, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But we don't know the actual motivations of her father, as she is sitting here like, I don't know, man. I haven't seen him in 15 years. I don't know what to tell you, okay? I assume he's dead and all of these things. If I could have had the smallest question within my heart about his motivations on this, I would have been so much more invested at the point when I fell asleep.
So do you think that this scene then comes later? Because I do think we do need to see it. We need to see the tenderness, I think, between Galen and Jyn at some point. We need to see the strained relationship, I think, between Krennic and Galen. And we should see, I mean, we don't necessarily need to see the death of Jyn's mom, but we do need to know what happened that day.
And I agree. I would love to just see it later. And again, I think it's a really enjoyable scene to watch.
I think you could have put it in and have it be more striking the time where Jyn finally gets to see the message from Galen. I think, and that unlocks like, oh my God, I like that brings her back to the last time she saw her dad.
Exactly. You see his face, and then it goes to his face younger standing in front of Krennic. I think that would obviously, look, I'm not making a Star Wars movie. Okay. There's a reason I'm not making a Star Wars movie. There are people that are much more qualified to do it. But I think it's a very enjoyable scene to watch, but I think it harms the overall story because now we know everything.
Right.
There's no questions to Rogue One. We know they're going to die. We know that they're going to accomplish it. We know that they're going to get the plans and it's going to go to the rebellion and the Death Star is going to be able to be blown up. We know that Jin's father is a good guy that is working in favor of the rebellion. What am I watching for?
You also know what else this sets up? That we're going to get like an in-depth look at her relationship with Saw Gerrera. And we don't. We skip all of that, and then it's just told to us. And like again, that's why I think this would have been a better series where you get to actually see a little bit of that before we go on to this adventure or get flashbacks of it. The fact that we're set up this relationship and then you see none of it until one scene, and then he dies, and you're told about the relationship a little bit. It's weird storytelling to me. And then also the other note I have for this moment, the theme music for Star Wars Rogue One, a Star Wars story, where it's supposed to be gritty.
By Star Wars.
Sponsored by Star Wars, TM, is so antithetical to the theme of this movie. Like, it's so hopeful and boastful, and it's like, yeah, I get that the movie ends with, what did they deliver us? Hope. But, like...
I don't know about that. I'm gonna stop you there because I think the Michael Giacchino's main theme that goes throughout this is the inversion of the John Williams standard Star Wars fanfare, which I think is very triumphant. But he turns it by flipping it to those minor notes at the end, I think the Rogue One score has a much darker kind of like, ooh, we don't know what's
happening. I
happening.
think the overall
going
score, I'm talking like the theme that plays when Rogue One pops up, and it does have a little bit of that triumphant thing where it ends a little softly, where you're like, maybe not.
It's
but
like this is a Star Wars.
It
like that's
feels
what I like
weird
about it.
again with the context of like this for opening scene and stuff like that. It feels out of place in this moment.
That I don't know if I agree with you on, but I respect your opinion, and it's a free country. And we'll get to what I think about that Saw and Jin scene when we get to it. But so now we do have Jin in jail. Jin is in jail with a Blutopian, in case anybody was wondering. The Blutopian's name is Ulan Musters. There is a name for this character, just because there is a name for every character. The nickname for this character is actually Kennel, because there are so many parasites living on this disgusting prisoner that Jin Erso has to live with. So that's fun. That's a fun thing to know, and now you know it. Then we, as we're kind of seeing where Jin is, we also get our first appearance of Cassian. He's got Tivik here, who is a nervous informant who has hurt his arm somehow, and is very worried, and is worried that the whole rebellion is going to go down because the Empire's got this weapon. And Cassian's like, "Hey, be cool, my baby, be cool. Everything's going to be fine.
All good, dude.
It's all good. Blam, blam."
Yeah.
Cassian Andor style.
Which
I love this
a strong
as an
intro. Yeah, I think so. Like it really gives you like the hint of what he's willing to do to kind of make sure that the rebels are secure. I think the idea of I love the moment where he yells, "It's a planet killer." I think that's like a well-acted moment. I think the idea of a planet killer, but because this movie's got to move so fast, we're constantly moving on to the next thing. I think the idea of a planet killer is introduced way too early to the story.
No, but this should move fast.
We're 10 minutes in. Well, if it's a movie about the characters and we want to sit with these characters and learn about these characters before they inevitably go off onto their death, I disagree. But
I don't know, because we then go into a whole thing where it's like, they've got a planet killer, and everybody's like, that's ridiculous. This is propaganda. They don't have a planet killer. Where is this information coming from? This is an impossible weapon. So I think introducing it this early is a way to show that the rebellion isn't sure of themselves, doesn't have the informational network that we think they have, is still infighting amongst each other, still doesn't know what the Empire is about and what they can do. So I think this is okay. I promise I'm not going to argue with y'all on every single thing you bring up.
This spot here gives me something that I want from Andor, and has the opportunity to repair something for me that bothers me about Rogue One, which is every time that we see the rebellion, it's dire circumstances. And you can't really compare them because it's always the whole galaxy is going to be destroyed, right? From that's it. It's the war, right? So it's not like this is particularly a more dire time than it is in A New Hope, right? For the rebellion. I want answers as to why the Alliance and the rebellion, or at least this little portion of the Alliance, was so much more brutal in action than they are any other time we meet collections of the rebellion. And they're just telling us it is. You know what I mean? Like, this movie is like, hey, these guys ain't playing around. They will straight up kill somebody and not give a shit. But I want to know why. It's always been that dire, and I think it's justifiable to say that has always been worthwhile, but we don't see that anywhere else.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a big thing that this movie wanted to bring in, is we have always seen it up until Rogue One from the point of view of the big deal heroes, right? We've seen it from the points of view of the space wizards and the generals and the princesses and all of this stuff where it's like very top level. And we hear things like, hey, they risked their lives to bring us these plans. And it's like, well, who did? And what did they do? Because by the time we get to the people that are going to be like going up against the Death Star, it's baby space wizard and his special buddies. And so I think what I like about this is like, hey, just so you know, in order to get this information, and that's one of the things that I like about The Last Jedi as well. The Canto Bite bits that people really don't like, I enjoy because because you get a lot of conversation of like, hey, who do you think makes money on every single X-Wing built? Who do you think wants this war to continue endlessly? And so I like that the new movies bring this in a little bit, but you are right in that because we've only seen it from the points of view of these main films and for a lot of people just cartoons or comics or things like that, it's like, yo, when did things get this gritty? When did things get this grim? And I think part of it is that they're trying to explain is like they don't know. They also don't know what they're doing yet, and it's a bunch of like insurgent cells that don't get along that have no mission statement yet. You know what I mean? Where it's like even the fact that Saw Gerrera is here, they're like, yeah, we used to work with Saw Gerrera. Saw Gerrera got a little weird.
Yeah, because it's like maybe Saw Gerrera was trained by Anakin Skywalker, and that's why he got a little weird, you know?
Yeah, but it's this whole thing of like you see these people arguing where it's like, yo, we don't want to do too much fighting because this isn't a full-on war yet. And then you've got Saw Gerrera that's like, I'm gonna blow up everybody and I'm gonna murder everyone because that's how you get this done. And
to Sage's point, I do think Andor already is even kind of dealing with this. Like there was those lines talking about like the different kind of sections that there are of the rebellion, and then him being like, aren't they all the same? It's like I do like that they're getting into it, but yeah, like so far, Rogue One I think was a very distinct and different take on it all, and I vibe with it. I like it a lot. I like that we're getting more of it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because this is one of the things that I think people love about it so much is that it did bring the darker into Star Wars, which like I wasn't necessarily waiting for. I wasn't one of those people that were like Star Wars movies need to be serious and need to be darker. So I understand like there's some tonal whiplash here if you've been watching Star Wars all your life and now it's like all of a sudden it's like we murder people in an alley. You know, like I totally get where people are coming from on that. Where we're going right now is to Jeddah, which is
that Jeddah theme fucking goes hard every time I listen to it. That you feel the kind of vibration on whatever string is being pulled at there. It's so good. It's so cool.
All of Jeddah goes hard. The look of Jeddah goes hard.
Oh my God, the look of Jeddah.
I don't know how I feel about that mountain, though.
I love it.
The Jedi mountain.
Oh my God.
It's a fallen statue.
Yeah.
Miss me with that. Don't like it.
You don't like it? Fallen Jedi statues?
This is so cool.
Wait, no, hold on. Wait, Tim, what do you not like about it?
To me, I'll take the blue milk zoom in any day of the week. That a little too on the nose for me. Don't like it.
It's a
giant statue. It's not like, accidentally the rocks formed into the shape of a Jedi. We built statues here because this was the Jedi temple and it's fallen.
You don't like it?
Don't like it.
You don't like it?
No.
See, to me, when you talk about Jeddah and you talk about like, this is where they're mining, this is where they're like trying to get all this Kyber from and in and out of this planet. And it just makes sense that this holy, they call it the holy city, right? And it makes sense to me that like, this would have been some central, like ancient Jedi, like, and so of course there's like a giant statue of some Jedi whose name we don't know anymore. And I don't know. I like it. It's got that Ozymandias, look on my works, ye mighty in despair thing.
I wrote down my 3 favorite things from this movie, and that's one of them.
I love it, Sage. I wrote down my 18 least favorite, and it's one of them.
A quick thing, just another design thing. I love the design of Saw Gerrera's like second in command. That like weird little that weird guy with the kind of like half mask face and stuff like that. He's always
Two Tubes. They're brothers. They're twin brothers.
Oh, really? Okay.
They're egg mates is what they call it.
That's weird. Okay.
But
but I like it, and I also wrote in my notes here, hey kids, it's Riz Ahmed.
It's Riz Ahmed. And he's there.
Also maybe creepiest character in Star Wars. Like the way that they designed this character of like Saw Gerrera's guy, like is aesthetically so different from the rest of like Star Wars aliens. They're communicating something big with the look of that, just because it's like rougher around the edges and like the metal pieces look grosser.
Yeah, it reminds me of like the first time you see the bounty hunters in Empire when Vader calls in, and you're like, whoa, like this is a different tone from what we've seen so far, which is cool.
A fun fact about Two Tubes is after the fall of Jeddah, one of them gets out and becomes one of the Cloud Riders that works with Enfys Nest.
Oh, interesting.
So that's fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or starts with Memphis Nest and then goes to Jeddah. I'm trying to remember my timelines.
Because wouldn't Solo be before this?
Yes.
Yes. So started as a cloud rider, then goes to work for Saw Gerrera.
Sick.
So yeah, Bodhi Rook is like, hey, no, we're on the same side. I promise you, like, I'm here. Don't let the uniform fool you. And then they're like, yeah, throw a mask on him. Let's get him out of here. Meanwhile, Jin's on her way to the labor camp. She's going by the alias Leanna Hollick, and she gets liberated and does not enjoy that. And immediately takes out her liberators, tries to run away, and gets choke slammed by K2SO in one of my favorite droid introductions in the history of Star Wars.
K2SO.
Congratulations, you are being liberated.
Best
Please
developed
do not resist.
character in this movie. K2SO.
I agree.
Yeah.
I will also say, because this is the meeting of K2SO, the number one thing that I remembered enjoying about this movie was K2SO.
Mhm.
That was like always the thing where I was like, yeah, but K2SO is great. The hallway scene with Vader is great. They're the things that like ping and you remember. K2SO is less original than I remember. His personality is excellent. I wish they would have given him a little less 3PO.
He is very 3PO in ways. Yeah.
Like, it overlaps a little too much.
It's almost like the cadence of it, of like the delivery of the lines and stuff, where I definitely see that. But I also wrote down in my notes, Alan Tudyk is the GOAT. At the
so
same
true.
time.
100%. Absolutely correct. Alan Tudyk's phenomenal, and this character is phenomenal. There were just a couple of things where they were like, do you get it? Do you get it? He's like 3PO. See?
Yeah.
He's
Like, he
3PO,
said the
but he
thing.
can actually fight, you know? So he's
Like,
not
he
a wimp.
said the thing. Right.
Yeah, and I wonder if
Very
it's something
3PO.
where at that point they were trying to be like, well, most droids have like a similar base personality or something because they hadn't done too. I mean, they'd done a lot, but they hadn't done a lot live action in films. And as we know, the movies tend to do what they want and worry less about the other stuff in canon. So I wonder if they weren't like, I don't know, but this is sort of like Cassian is sort of like, what if Han Solo was a little grimdark, you know what I mean? And was like a very serious rebellion spy. And so I think we were supposed to sort of see him and K2 as sort of like, yeah, these are the buddies but through like a very dire mirror that had a much harder life in a way,
Yeah.
So anyway, we head to Yavin 4. I fucking love Yavin 4. I love computers and ziggurats. It's a good look. It's an aesthetic that I enjoy.
Come on, they knew what they were doing and they pulled it off, in my opinion.
We get Davitz Draven, General Draven, who is talking to Jyn Erso about like, hey, what do you know? What do you know about your dad? What's going on here? Cassian's interrogating her a little bit. Mon Mothma walks in and immediately just takes over the energy of the scene.
Yeah, she's the best.
She's so good.
They did that so well because they lit her in a way that does that. It was so intentional, from the outfit that she wears to the way that she carries herself to the way that they spotlight Mon Mothma as she enters in there. You're just like, everyone
she's
kneel.
important.
Yeah.
Everyone kneel.
And it's funny too of like thinking about where this is in the timeline where they're kind of building up her character and her character arc in Andor. It feels like the first time she's really letting herself come out of the shadows as like the leader of the rebellion in a way, which is really freaking cool.
And she's not dressed all business-like or anything. She's got more of like the classic. And what I love about this entrance, and some of the biggest complaints that I think people have about new Star Wars and current Star Wars is like, we've talked about it before. It's the glup shitto thing. It's like, look at this thing that's in the background. Look at this character. We're going to mention this thing. What I will say, and I give credit to everyone on the writing team, but of course, the only one I'm friends with is Gary Whitta. So I'm going to say this was Gary Whitta. Gary
Only
Whitta
the good things for Gary.
Did an amazing job of putting these things in a way that doesn't bug you so much or doesn't make you go, oh, they're pointing something out. Like that shot is them giving Mon Mothma her flowers after years of like hardcore Star Wars fans knowing how cool Mon Mothma is and just being like, here she is. We know how cool Mon Mothma is too. And I just love that.
You know who else is cool?
Bail Organa, baby. Let's
Jimmy
get everyone in
Smits,
this.
let's go.
Just
1-2
walking
punch.
out of the shadows.
Love it. Love it so much.
We didn't even know what was he doing there? When was he there? We don't know.
Yeah,
the whole
we don't
time.
know.
Bail
Who cares?
Organa.
I also have it written down in my notes here. It's like this scene, this conversation that's kind of going back and forth, them giving kind of their what's led them to this moment of speaking with Jin, the idea of this planet killer, talking to Galen. I have it written in my notes. Two things is every important aspect of this movie I feel like is introduced so quickly. Like I was saying earlier, it feels like the movie just wants to get going when these characters we should be sitting and breathing with for this kind of story. And then when Jin is sent on this mission, on this journey, we barely know her as a character, which doesn't like get me invested into her by the time they're going out to Jeddah, where it's like, and I get what they're doing here, where she doesn't even really know who she is and like what she's about and stuff like that. But again, to kind of pull that off into a 2-hour movie, and you're already going on this adventure 20 minutes into the movie, it was hard for me to kind of like connect with anybody on that team at that point.
It cribs a lot from old school movies like Bridge on the River Kwai or old Steve McQueen movies, where it's just kind of like you get introduced to the team, and you get 3 lines to really understand what each member is about. It's like a very classic kind of like war movie thing.
Yeah,
and,
I would push back on that.
But
though,
here's what I'm
Jin.
saying. But here's what I'm saying is it's very classic. But movies have come a long way since those films, and storytelling has come a long way since those films.
Right.
So I understand how something like that can feel hollow, which is why I love that they got as brilliant a cast as they got. Is so when people have to deliver these lines, when Jin Erso says, I've never had the luxury of political opinions, you have to feel all the subtext coming from Felicity.
Yep, and that's something else
it.
I have written in my notes, because at first when I first saw this movie, I kind of chalked it up of like maybe I just didn't like Felicity Jones' performance in this. Rewatching it this time, I had in my notes like everybody gives their all with what little they're given. Like with Felicity Jones, Diego Luna, I have written down. It's like you feel it in their performance, but again, I wish they were given a little bit more to really back that up with.
A very similar experience with it. Originally, I was like, maybe I just don't like Felicity Jones, which is like weird. But I don't know. I don't usually have that experience where I'm just like, man, I just really hate this leading person and there's nothing they can do about it. And watching it back, that's why I was like, I do like it more. And I was always really just like, I just don't like really Cassian or Jin. And that was the problem, obviously. But I liked Jin. It's a big problem for this movie. I liked Jin so much more. I still stayed pretty whatever on Cassian personally. I like him so much more in Andor already than I did through this movie or ever have. But I agree that Felicity was given it. There was just nothing to give. Like giving what? If there's no context provided to who this woman is, like, okay, she's at some point is just having to say the lines because we're not getting any time to like meet her and like give her something other than I'm mad about my dad.
Right. We get to some parts in Act 3 where I think there's some subtextual like physical performance stuff between Felicity and Diego that I think sells things a lot better. But you're right. In the beginning of this, it's kind of like, So they talk about how Saw Gerrera is very dangerous, and then we go right back over to see just how dangerous Saw Gerrera is.
How dangerous is he, Carboni? Tell me.
He's so dangerous. By the way, I'm sorry, I forgot to shout out General Dodonna in that scene. Shout out to General Dodonna.
Shout out.
But Saw Gerrera, Bodhi says that Galen sent him. Hey, I've been sent by Galen, like, and Saw Gerrera's just like, have you? Lies, deceptions, more and more every day. Oh, listen, is it a choice? Sure.
Yes.
Can you like or dislike this choice? Absolutely. Do I love this choice? 100%.
And that's
okay.
fair.
I want to know, what is everyone's vibe check on Saw Gerrera? Let's give an overall. Do you like Saw Gerrera?
Tim, I want to start with you.
Saw Gerrera, I am all about. I love it. I love these choices. I think that some of the plot choices around this, and specifically the memory freaking monster thing, I hate that. But and to me, Barrett's whole thing about the character development and like not getting enough of it for like where we're at, Saw Gerrera to me is, I think, the worst case of it. where it's like, I love the idea of him. I love the performance of him. I love everything about him here. I feel like it's not earned, and I feel like it's not done justice to deserve this much screen time, honestly, and this much presence for something that feels confusing to the lore more than it does additive. And I understand he's been in other things in the games and the shows and all that stuff, but like, we're talking about this movie, and I think in this movie they didn't do the best job setting him up to have this moment hit correctly. Having said that, they did everything they could in the scene itself, because I love his performance.
Fucking love.
Barrett.
Every time I write notes about something I watch in Star Wars and Saw Gerrera pops up, whether that be this movie, whether that be Star Wars, The Clone Wars, whether that be Star Wars Rebels, whether it be Jedi Fallen Order, I always write down, enough Saw Gerrera. We tried again. I love the idea of him. It just never hits. I love the idea that Anakin and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka were the ones who trained him in like guerrilla warfare and stuff like that. He is never, I just don't know if it's like whenever they try to write that character, it just isn't, the execution just doesn't grab me for whatever reason. I think in the context of this movie, there was something there. But again, I think what you were saying earlier, Sage, like the opening scene does a discredit to it. Because you see him for like a couple seconds, and he seems like, he's... he sees a little hole, like, come on, child, like, we've got a long journey to go. And he seems fairly normal. Like, he might be on the run. He's like a normal, but he's still kind of a normal dude as much as you know about him in this movie. And then the next time you see him, he's screaming, lies, deception, more every day. And you're like, oh, this guy's fallen off the deep end. I would have liked to have seen that. How did he get from 0 to 100? Show me that.
Where was the long journey?
Show me. Don't tell me like you're doing with every single plot aspect in this movie, man.
They'll show you on Disney Plus in 2025.
It's funny because number one, Saw Gerrera, I love. Hundo P. I'm 100% on board with Saw Gerrera and everything Saw Gerrera does. They showed Forrest Whitaker this breathing mask, and he's like, I got it. I got the whole character. You don't need to tell me anything about it. I love it where he like kind
of just like forcefully grabs it and then like throws it.
Send you to kill me. There isn't much of me left. Oh, I fucking
that was great performances.
So Gareth Edwards and Gary, who loves Saw Gerrera, bring up and name check Colonel Kurtz from Apocalypse Now, this military guy who has gone off the deep end. You haven't seen, but like he's been in warfare, he's been in the shit for so long, and you see it a little bit more in this scene where he confronts Jin. But I love it. But all he really says here is "Borgullet." And then I got to do another vibe check, Sage. And I'm going to start with you.
Yeah.
CG Tarkin. Let's discuss.
I think most of the CG characters were just unnecessary in this when you could have done something implied. And we'll revisit the CG characters portion later of this because obviously we know it will come back up.
Yep.
This one bothers me less than the later one.
Mm-hmm.
But like, it feels more like, guys, we can do this, as opposed to like, we should do this.
Yes.
You asked if you could. You never stopped to ask if you should.
100%.
That's how I feel about the CGI characters.
Before we even get that shot of CG Tarkin, we got to talk about that first shot of the Death Star. Because again, just the cinematography of this movie, what they were able to pull off. That first Death Star shot might be the hottest shot of Death Stars. Second.
No,
because
there's
we're going to get
one
one
later.
Yes.
There's one that comes later.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this one, still
Pretty damn good.
fucking
Very
hot.
Phenomenal shot.
And also,
phenomenal shot.
Also,
but you're avoiding
CG Tarkin.
CG Tarkin, which is,
you
can't avoid CG
the
Tarkin.
first shot where you see
He
the
gets so many
reflection
close-ups,
on the
Barrett,
glass.
you can't avoid him.
I know. When you get the reflection on the glass, I remember my thought for the first time watching the movie where I was like, that's tasteful. Just get a little bit of him, like behind the head shots. You can kind of see him, like maybe shots of him moving his body around and stuff, or you're more focusing on Ben Mendelsohn's character, stuff like that. But then he just turns around and you're like, oh God, what are they doing? Again, going back to
Jesus.
Sage. You thought more about if you could rather than if you should. Yeah.
CG Tarkin?
Fucking love it. Are you kidding me? Come on. It's a fucking character that is like, there's no other way to bring it back. This is the only way. It makes perfect sense for him to be a part of this. Did they need to have as many close-ups? Absolutely not. Would I have done it a little bit differently? Yes. Do I think that this is this egregious, like terrible thing? Absolutely not. I would rather have it how it is than not have Tarkin at all. The Leia thing later at the end, yeah. Is it a little too much? Absolutely. Absolutely.
100%.
Did I mark out?
No.
Yes, I did. Did I love it? I did. Do I love watching it now? It looks a little silly. I'll admit it. I'll admit it looks silly. But my thing is, if it's going to be for just a bit, if it's going to be just for a second, a line, whatever, you get it. We understand what they're trying to do. I'm fine with that.
Yes.
I don't like it when it's like, oh, hey, here's Luke Skywalker, and now he's just going to be in this episode now, and we're just going to have to deal with this robot situation. Like, that's when I have a bigger problem with it. When it's like, here's Tarkin in a goddamn scene, you get the Tim Geddes round of applause. What do you think,
That's so
Carboni?
wild. His hair defies gravity. It goes up. Why does it do that?
He's dead. He's no longer living. This actor, he is gone.
So
everyone
again,
knows that once
a little
you
bit
die, your
ethically,
hair's
like someone in the chat says, Michael, ethically, a little dubious. A little dubious,
Yeah.
I will say.
I don't think we should put dead people in movies.
Well, listen, sure, that's a whole thing. Here's what I'll say about CG Tarkin. You know, the entire prequel trilogy was made based on look what we can do, not look whether we should do this, but look what we can do and can we pull it off. So I'm not surprised that this is the way that they decided to go with it. Can we make a fully realistic human? Can it be like Peter Cushing is there? Can we make this work? Kind of, like mostly, I think, but I do agree that you didn't need to do as many close-ups, static shots. You didn't need to hang on him as much. In order to sell the effect a little more, there are ways where the scene could have been shot a little more artfully. And I feel like that was probably Lucasfilm and ILM telling Gareth, no, we have this technology and we're showing it off, because that's what they like to do. That being said, it's aged a little more gracefully than I thought it would have. It didn't bug me as much as I thought. Yeah. Even the Leia, and I don't know if they touched up the Leia in the intervening years since I first saw it, but the Leia,
they made it blank.
Leia does not look great, I'm gonna say.
I'm not
going to say that she looks great, but she does look a little better than I thought she did, and we've got tons to say about that. I'm sure
We're missing the meat of this scene here, because
the whole
take
movie
it back. Take it back. Take it back 30 minutes when I said Ben Mendelsohn is a very good antagonist. Bringing it back. Ooh. Ben Mendelsohn is also a very good protagonist. Are you kidding me with this story of like the dynamic between him and Tarkin and this whole political stuff inside the Empire of, playing politics with your senior officers and them possibly ruining your careers? I love that shit. And we should have gotten 10 times more of it. And you know how we could have gotten that? In a series where we actually spend time with Ben Mendelsohn's character and you see him ride the high of his career. Then it all is all the more satisfying when it's all taken away from him with that beautiful shot at the end that we'll talk about later.
I'm not gonna say that I don't want more Orson Krennic. I'll tell you that I want tons more Orson Krennic. This scene's very short, but it did. We do get more of that inter-department argument later, but I just thought about, like, Ben Mendelsohn has this thing that new Star Wars really loves for their villains, which is also something that Adam Driver does really well, which is I'm constantly angry and always trying to hide it. And about 60% of the time I can, but when I can't, it is real. Intense. And
I think Krennic's also a very good example of that. They really did make this movie look like the space 70s. And I think that's very impressive.
Yes.
Overall, this looks the most like the original trilogy. And that makes sense, like timeline wise. You watch the sequels, you watch the, later Skywalker saga, etc. And it looks like very different times, like it's supposed to. Rey's in a completely different world. But like this really does look like the space 70s that Star Wars was originally. And I think that's cool. Krennic's a great character for that. Yeah,
the dark shininess of all of the interiors of the Imperial stuff looks so 70s. Looks so like the original Imperial stuff. Huh?
The way they cast for it is different too.
Yeah.
Ben Mendelsohn looks like a character out of the 70s Star Wars. Him as a person, his face. And that's not the case in the Kylo Ren years.
No. That's one thing that I do like about everybody in Rogue One is like, obviously Felicity Jones has those movie star looks and everything, but most of the people, like when you look at Rogue One, the squadron, you're like, these look like regular people. Like they're good looking people, but they're regular people. Let's jump into this flashback that we see of Galen and Krennic having a party.
Coruscant, baby.
Yeah, just hanging out, just like being cool, and we get a little bit of the happier times before Jyn remembers being put into the tunnel, and then she wakes up, and we are on Jeddah with a Star Destroyer over the city, which looks so cool.
Which is not something we see often in live action stuff, and it looks so dope here.
It just never doesn't look cool. So we have the Star Destroyer over the city. We
Real quick,
learned
the flashback I liked a lot, and you guys know this, but I always love when the prequel era and the original trilogy era kind of have some overlap where like planets or like ideas or characters from one era we see in the other. And this was really the first time ever we saw that in live action, because Force Awakens like pretended the prequels didn't exist at all. And so this having Coruscant, I remember being like, oh my God, they fucking did it. Whereas in Force Awakens, they decided to like, you wanted a planet killer? Well, we got galaxy killer, motherfuckers, and you think that's Coruscant? It's not Coruscant. It's just another place that looks like
Coruscant. So we have the whole thing with Saw has been attacking cargo shipments of Kyber crystals, is what we find out. And so they're going to find out what's going on. And I love this. There's so much good K2 stuff. So many of my notes are like K2 stuff. Like I ignored the blaster thing earlier, but it was a good exchange. But this whole thing where it's like, oh, well, maybe we should leave target practice here. It's like, are you saying I can't blend in? I'm an Imperial droid. This is an Imperial occupied city. I can blend in. And they're just like,
Yeah. And I love how he sassily drops the bag too. Or he's just like, whatever. And then even earlier where he's like, the likelihood of her using that against us, it's high. It's very high. Like he's like a sassy little boy.
What do I know? My specialty is just strategic analysis. It's fine. Like, but this is where the real star of the series shows up, sculpted by Neil Scanlon and the Creature Shop. The first creature to be sculpted at full size, 2.5 tons of silicon, measuring at 10 by 6 by 6 feet, fully articulated puppet. This is the pride of the Mayran, Bor Gullet.
I'm starting to think Bor Gullet doesn't.
Gullet.
Good job, Tim.
I'm
starting to think it makes no fucking sense as a concept. Like, how can someone tell the truth?
I'm starting
to
think that fuck you, Barrett Courtney.
I was starting to think, like, maybe, Carboni, like, how can one tell the truth if they lose their mind? What's the point of that? You extract the truth, and if it drives them crazy in the process, this is where we're seeing. This is where we are seeing. Where is the truth extracted? Is Bor Gullet pulling the truth?
The brain. He has a tentacle, a going brain.
Does the Bor Gullet speak out loud the truth? Like, how? What is that process?
Yeah, sure.
It doesn't fucking make any sense.
It go in brain.
Hate it.
You see brain hole later. It mess with him.
It go in person being interrogated brain, right?
Yeah.
In any scenario, not this specific one. It go in person being interrogated brain.
Yes.
Blah, 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 like a straw.
Yeah.
Like a little silly straw. Okay.
Yeah, psychic
and then
straw.
it spits it into his
gullet.
brain.
It starts the boar as the gullet.
Yeah.
Like it spits it
psychic.
into Saw Gerrera's brain. It then puts a tentacle there.
I don't know what you don't understand about.
But also,
this
like, if that's the process, wouldn't Saw Gerrera be like, "Oh shit, he told the truth," and not still be suspicious when Jyn Erso shows up?
Look,
Bor Gullet says it in English, and Anthony,
he
sound?
says it
How
in
would
basic.
He sound if he
says
did
it in basic, and it's voiced by Anthony Hopkins for some reason.
Look, I love Bor Gullet. I think Bor Gullet rules, and
I think Bor Gullet should rule. I'm gonna agree with you that conceptually, if they were like, yo, there's a creature in Star Wars that like tentacles the truth out of your brains, it casts Zone of Truth on you for my
Yeah.
D&D people, I'd be
Or
like,
Gullet.
hell yeah. In practice, I don't think that it did that, but I love the idea of it, and I see the potential for more of these creatures within the universe to tell weird stories with. It's just not there for me.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
my,
fine.
My biggest problem with the Borgullet is that it is one of those examples of they introduced a character and plot point just to have like this scene. And I feel like had it been an established thing in the Star Wars lore that we understood, and it's like, oh shit, Saw Gerrera is so evil and like so like any means necessary that he'll use this thing to do that. That's messed up.
But
I feel like that would make a lot more sense
like,
than,
but
than
you're arguing
introducing
that
things when we haven't had characters that we've already been introduced go deep enough with.
buddy,
Here's the Borgullet.
It's a big purple tentacle monster. We know Saw Gerrera's gone over the edge. How much explanation do you need? Borgullet is a bad thing.
I do agree with that.
It's not that I needed more explanation. I wanted less explanation. I wanted not have to be explained in this scene. More things happening. For
Tim
the
is saying
scene
we're not
itself.
getting enough time. There's too many
Borgullet's gonna get it out of you. There's nothing to explain.
Like all the talk about Borgullet, I would have rather just had a conversation with Riz Ahmed. You know what I mean?
Listen, I would love to sit down and have a conversation with Riz Ahmed. Okay? But we're talking about Bodhi Rook, and we're talking about Saw Gerrera. And Saw Gerrera is going to get the real information, and he's going to use Borgullet to do it. I don't get what's wrong with you people. Meanwhile, in the Jeddah marketplace.
It was a cool vibe. I know we see a lot of desert planets here, but I there's something about the holy city that I really liked, and I felt like it stood out against something like Tatooine and other places.
Dude, I think this is proof that the problem isn't desert planets. The problem is giving desert planets like identifiable features that make them unique to themselves and not just another Tatooine.
The other one is just they just put Tatooine in everything.
Exactly.
Literally
literally Tatooine, but it's like I feel like Jakku didn't have enough of a defining thing to itself in any of the times we saw it. So it just felt like, oh, it's Tatooine by everything but name. Right. And I guess there was a
like it was
there,
weird that it wasn't Tatooine. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like sometimes like with Jakku, you were like, so there's just another Tatooine where like more of this shit's going on. Like I get that.
Yeah.
What I think I love about the Jeddah marketplace is, and I want to give a shout out to this. Gareth Edwards understands the Star Wars style guide so much, and he leaned into it so hard. We get a lot of marketplace scenes. We get a lot of crowd scenes. There are so many little shots of puppets and creatures and
Star Wars.
Just Star Wars. And he's not hanging too long on them. He's not like, look at this cool little thing. You know, you see all of these different creatures that are just kind of like looking around in the marketplace, and they're treated like they're regular people in the crowd, which is how they should be treated.
Yeah.
And the density of them in this one scene is just phenomenal. I just think Gareth doesn't get his due enough for being just a great Star Wars director, and I think he really, really was. So, but then we do get a Glup Shido moment here. Two of Gary Whitta's favorite characters, Ponda Baba and Dr. Evazan,
Hey kids,
who have to get who have to get from here. Who have to get from here to Tatooine in time to get their arms cut off and shit. I do it's like, I don't mind it because it happens so quickly, and like they could have knocked into anybody and just been like, oh, this is a tough place. It didn't hang on it long enough where I was like, ugh, you know.
It didn't feel agreed. It was a fun little moment. I never hated that moment.
No. And then we get the first example of the line here. Rebellions are built on hope from Cassian,
which
and
I 100% will think will be in Andor. That will be said out loud in Andor somewhere, whether in season 1 or season 2, because you know there will be time jumps and stuff like that.
He taught it to Jin, but who taught it to him?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ding dang, Donnie Yen, the world's biggest action movie star, making his big budget Hollywood debut. He had been in Hollywood stuff before, but this is us.
This is Star Wars.
This is America doing an American movie doing a Donnie Yen vehicle for like one of the big summer blockbusters, and it was so amazing to see him in this. And this first scene is wonderful because it shows, like, we're always talking about how there are too many Jedi. Like, why is everybody a Jedi? Why does everybody have to be a Jedi? If the Force is a mystical thing, aren't there 100 different ways to access it?
Which obviously with Disney Plus we're getting now, but at the time we hadn't yet.
Yes. And we gotten some of it a little bit in like the animated series and in the comics, but it was nice to see this monk, this guardian of the wills, which of course comes from the original George Lucas's original name for the Star Wars saga.
And why does Cassian know so much about that? Also something we'll learn in Andor.
Also, the Guardian of the Wills was supposed to be the original immortal being that narrated Star Wars. Instead of having like opening crawls, the Guardian of the Wills was going to be an immortal being that told us what was going on in Star Wars. So I think it's fun that
probably a good choice that they didn't do that. I feel like Guardian of the Wills would have been a lot to start off Star Wars with.
Yeah. You just have Star Wars God, and that'd be weird.
Yeah. Well, he said a lot of the stuff, like the wills turned into the Force. And so I love that this was brought back as a term to use. We also get
I love him so much. I love
so good.
Pretty much, honestly, I think him and his boy are like two of the better characters in this movie. And I feel like they are they work for me because they don't need to have these crazy character arcs or anything. They kind of just like add to the vibe and add to the plot and the lore that we're getting.
They add
and
to the team dynamic.
Yep, exactly. And in the same way that we're talking about giving props to this movie and Last Jedi, kind of showing that it's not all good, bad, like the rebellion can be bad as well. And like who you think makes these things, like all those conversations. I do like how much this in one character introduction moment adds to the Force in general and everything we know about it and what it can mean for people and what it does mean to the Star Wars world itself when it isn't tied to Darth Vader versus Luke Skywalker. So I think that like these characters alone make this movie like a higher tiered Star Wars movie for me.
I agree. I think they're by far the best characters in the movie by like leaps and bounds. The action scene is my favorite action scene throughout it, even including the Vader scene at the end. I think this is really phenomenal and interesting. I really enjoy the concept being broadened of the Force goes beyond the Jedi. One, that if this is this fizzled out thing that people have lost belief and hope in and lost connection to, that there would naturally be those people that are like borderline conspiracy theorists holding on to this concept of the Force, right? And that this guy's sitting there like, no, I know that I believe in the Force. And whether it's real or not, his ability to connect with it, I personally think he has, like, it's a Force sensitivity, which we know exists. Like the way that he moves and exists is a really cool thing to go, hey, not everyone who connects to the Force is a Jedi. This is something that exists in everyone canonically, and this is how he uses it. And I think that's very cool.
Yeah. It's
not
also,
enough
also
of these fight scenes too.
Yeah. It was also just so fun to me to get this. It's a very Eastern movie thing. And a very Eastern sort of legendary tradition where you get the monk who has to be pure and walk through the world pure, who has, usually like a samurai or a warrior that does the dirty work for him so he can stay pure and stay spiritual. And I love that they brought that into Star Wars and kind of made that part of it. We do get into this very, very good action sequence now, which I think, once again, extremely well directed by Gareth, amazing camera work by Greg Fraser, where this is not a style of battle sequence that we had ever seen in Star Wars. This is directed like a war movie. This shootout in the square in the Holy City, it is a war movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The child screaming, Jin running in to save, like all of that sequence from the second that the blasting starts is very like outside of Star Wars, but it changes genres, I think, a few times throughout it, and I don't mind that. I think that's cool.
It does. It does. It starts with like very handheld camera work, like very kind of traditional military movie camera work, until you get Chirrut Imwe going into the battle, when everything changes into very smooth, very controlled camera work as Chirrut takes control of the battlefield. Which I absolutely love. I love this sequence. I think it's an amazing, amazing action sequence. Also, shout out to Moroff the Gigaran in the background, that big, abominable snowman-looking dude.
Yeah,
who's
shout out
part
to
of
him.
the Partisans.
Yeah.
One of my favorite members of the Partisans, more off the Gigaran.
I agree with y'all on this scene. Again, I think character-wise, though, what they try to do with this, where Jin saves the little kid, I think would have hit a little more, again, if the beginning of her arc had a little bit more direction on who the hell she is. Like, at this point, I wrote down, Jin Urso reminds me of the Qui-Gon Jinn test from Red Letter Media, where they're like, all right, describe the character without any features or lines that they say. Describe the character of Han Solo. Describe the character of Princess Leia. Describe the character of Luke. And then they're like, describe Qui-Gon Jinn. And everybody is like, oh, that's kind of tough because they're almost a non-character. And up until this point, even a little after this point, again, I feel like Felicity Jones' performance, great, but what is written here, Jin Urso still feels like a non-character to me, which is not what you want in your protagonist.
Absolutely agreed.
I think I believe the motivation of it, even if she's not 100% sure she's with the rebellion yet. I believe it because, obviously she sees a screaming little girl who's about to be, separated from her family and hurt by the Empire, and that's at least personal to her, which I like. And I do like that
it wasn't a moment. I don't think it was as big of a moment as I think it should have been.
Didn't hit as crazy. I think it hit better as a showing the differences between Jin and Cassian, where Cassian was like, if a kid dies right now, because we've got bigger fish to fry.
I also, in this sequence, I wrote down, I want Diego Luna to nod at me one day like he nodded at Jin after watching her back. That's all else I'll add here.
Yeah, that's all I want. I do like there is a no-look blaster shot to a stormtrooper, because you got to do that in this scene.
Gotta do it.
You got to do it. Jin shoots a stormtrooper in the leg there. And then, you get your Jiang Wen as Baze Malice comes in at the end with his insane heavy firepower.
So sick.
And he's like, the Force protected me. He's like, the Force protected me? I protected you.
Yeah. Also, this is another scene. Alan Tudyk, again, the GOAT, deserves an award for this performance with just the line, I'm imprisoning them in prison. So fucking god tier with that performance. So good.
I also really love the interaction between, I will say, some of these relationships do work really well, and Jin and K2 works really well for me.
Yeah, where he's like, did you know that wasn't me?
Yeah. She's like, yeah, of course. Yeah. And then at the end, of course, the Partisans, two tubes comes up and is like, yo, we're gonna take you. We're gonna take you to Saw Gerrera. It's like, great, you better take me to Saw Gerrera. He's like, fine, we will take you.
I'm the most special boy in the galaxy.
And then
you'll have to answer to my dads.
Whichever dad it is. But I do love Chirrut Imwe's like, are you kidding me? I'm blind, as they're putting the bag over his head.
Perfect. Get to chuckle every time I see it.
So then they're in prison. And we get the little bit of the Baze and Chirrut thing where it's like, oh, he's praying for the door to open.
I'm one with the Force. The Force is with me.
Yeah, and Chirrut's like, oh, he's just upset because he knows it's possible. Like, he knows I might open this door with the Force today. I don't know. Maybe today's the day I open the door with the Force.
He also says at one point, like, Cassian's trying to physically do it. He says to Cassian, I sent you carry a prison for wherever you go. A cool line. But again, build that more. Show me.
Yeah.
Don't tell me.
I love we see the shots of the Star Destroyers leaving and like the TIE fighters like around it. It's like in so many ways this movie is just like Star Wars fantasy fulfillment of like, wouldn't it be cool if? And they're just like, yeah, it would, and they just do it.
Yeah, it's really nice. Everything with ships in this movie. Like, they were like, if we're gonna make a war movie, like, they're all Star Wars movies, but if we're gonna make a war movie, like, let's make sure we know how to make all of these, like, all of our battleships and our jet planes and all of our stuff that has to look cool. Let's make it look cool. So then we get the scene between Jin and Saw, which I do really love. I think these two actors are selling it, and I understand the show don't tell. I understand that we should see more of this. There should be more flashbacks of this relationship between the two of them. But I do love are we not still friends? And it's like,
but it doesn't, it's not earned.
Right, I would have loved to see that like shot of 16-year-old Jyn Erso getting abandoned again, because the theme of this movie and the theme of who she is and why she's so like bitter for the beginning of this is that she just keeps getting abandoned. She's been abandoned over and over and over again. And though I know that, I would love for you to show me that. Show me her getting left behind once again and being 16 and not able to understand why.
And
my biggest problem with this scene in particular is how rushed it feels in the scene, even. Like the fact that there's the added bonus of like, oh man, the freaking planet's exploding. It adds this like level of like, we gotta hurry, we gotta stress that.
But then also we need to take a moment to hear Galen's entire thing, you know?
It so almost feels like it's against itself in how they're presenting it to us. That's what rubs me the 100%.
Most wrong. That was another aspect that I didn't know how to word correctly, and Tim, you fucking you nailed it.
Just pacing and timing of all this as it's
going
down.
I can't help but wonder in a lot of these if there is more that was cut. And like, who knows?
Yes, there was.
Oh, yeah.
Right, like, there always is in a movie, but like, I can't help but wonder what parts, right? Because we don't know what was cut. So I have to believe that they must have fleshed out, like, because of how important they've made Saw Gerrera, there had to be more about Saw Gerrera, right?
Maybe.
There had to be.
Maybe. I mean, there was we only see one shot of him with like the super crazy hair, right, at the very beginning. I'm pretty sure in the trailer, like you see like not a hologram shot of him with the crazy hair. So there had to have been more that they're like, hey, a Star Wars movie needs to be close as to 2 hours as possible. We need to be in and out, which again, I think this is a disservice to what the premise of this kind of story is. Also, at one point he asks Jyn Erso, what do you want? She doesn't know. And neither do we. I wonder why it's hard for me to connect to her.
Right. I do think in a post Endgame world and in a post like all this world, I don't think they would. I think if Rogue One came out today, they wouldn't have any problem making it 2.5, 3 hours if they needed to. And I think we would have gotten a little bit more out of that. I do enjoy the Colonel Kurtz, Marlon Brando-ish performance, like that Apocalypse Now from Forrest Whitaker here, where he's like, oh, today of all days, it's a trap, isn't it? Where it's just like, oh,
you're so good at it, dude. Like, it's really kind of worrisome how good you are.
We used to listen in the Star Wars office. We did nothing but Saw Gerrera impressions for a long time. I love Saw Gerrera in this movie because he's so unhinged. And
there's
an
iconic Star or kind of funny moment, Carboni, that you'll appreciate, where Kevin, who you know well, and sometimes he speaks quicker than his brain is moving and all of that. He was once doing his impression of Forrest Whitaker in Rogue
and
One.
It was after you guys had first watched the Rogue One trailer. I think this was before the movie was even out.
And instead of saying "save the rebellion, save the dream," it sounded like he said, "Save the rebellion, save the trees." Like
the Lorax. Saw Gerrera is the Lorax.
So,
the best friend out there, can you make Saw Gerrera as the Lorax?
I speak for the trees.
Okay, moving past this though, this is where we get
the trees.
The best shot ever of the Death Star.
Oh, dude.
The upside down shot with the planet as the backdrop. Are you fucking kidding me?
It's so good.
Beautiful.
It's so good.
I mean, also, we haven't talked enough about the Death Star in general with this. I love that the plot of this movie, it's stealing the plans or whatever. We just kind of like just take for granted the fact that the Death Star, A, is named the Death Star. B, is a planet-destroying weapon. It is a super weapon that shoots a big blast made of lightsaber crystals to destroy a planet. And they're like, fuck it. We need to do a test to see, it's just going to destroy the city that our protagonists are in right now. Yeah. I fucking love the plot of this goddamn movie.
There's a beautiful Mako reactor thing to this whole thing, isn't there?
100%.
You know, where it's like, here are these kyber crystals. They connect us to the force that guides the universe. This is the central of like all of our spirituality. It's what makes us who we are. And these bad guys come in and they're like, looks like a fucking battery to me, dog.
Yep.
And I love that. God, I love the Final Fantasy VII of it all.
Also, in this, when we get back to the Death Star and we get like inside and they're about to test, this is where I wrote down, man, CG Tarkin is a choice.
CG Tarkin is a choice. I do want to say, I do love this scene between CG Tarkin who is played by, I think it's a combination of Guy Henry and Stephen Stanton. I think it's Guy Henry as physical and Stephen Stanton for voice. Even though I think Guy Henry does a pretty good Peter Cushing. I think they went with Stephen Stanton because he did it in the Clone Wars.
Right.
But Ben Mendelsohn acting against C.G. Tarkin in this scene, these are two. I mean, listen, whatever you think about the way C.G. Tarkin looks,
great protagonist.
Whatever you think about the way C.G. Tarkin looks, the performance of C.G. Tarkin
very good.
Is very good.
Yeah,
and the way he is just so calm, and he's just like, well, I'll tell the Emperor that your idiocy didn't stop this, and like, and it's like he's like, well, the Emperor and Vader should be here to see this. It's like, you're lucky that I didn't invite them because your shit goes wrong so often. It's just like the way he's poking at Krennic's buttons, and Krennic just falls for it, and it's just like, oh, I love Ben Mendelsohn so much. What do you think it was like when they wrapped on this movie every night, and fucking Ben Mendelsohn and fucking Hannibal Lecter, Mads Mikkelsen go out as these two fucking dope, cool European middle-aged dudes just out on the town? What was drinking with those guys like every night when Rogue One wrapped?
Man,
damn.
I can't even imagine that.
Damn. Just two cool old dudes in sweaters talking shit,
man.
Yeah,
I love that.
And continuing on this, like with this whole like taking over the project when it all like succeeds in this test and stuff like that. I just love that Ben Mendelsohn's story of a man being destroyed by the job he worked so hard for is some great commentary on the workforce in late stage capitalism, and I love it.
Yeah,
so
but also.
Good.
Also, you get what's coming to you if you spend your life working for the wrong thing, right? Like,
sure.
He's not forced into the capitalist system. He is a gleeful participant in the empirical system. He loves it. So yeah, this is where. So we get everybody's trying to get out of their cages. They're about to like set off the Death Star, single reactor, not a big deal, just single reactor, and we get Galen Erso's hologram pops up, and there's something so funny about this to me. Galen Erso's hologram pops up with its back to the camera, which is just so weird to me.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Is it symbolic of something? What does it mean? They turn on the hologram and it's facing the wrong way, and they have to walk around.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's weird.
They have to go on a journey around to see his true face. That's how you spend
Yeah, I wonder if it was supposed to be like a reveal for Jyn,
of what her
like,
father
see his
looks
face.
like.
I mean, flipping on a hologram.
Surprise, it's your freaking dad on this hologram. But I don't know. It's not really effective because she's kind of to the side of him.
Yeah.
It is just a little. It's
just
odd.
Yeah.
It's just odd.
And I think this sequence fully encompasses a lot of the problems of pacing, exposition, that just kind of gets dumped within like a 2-minute section, where Galen Erso delivers his message so quickly, and it's like so much exposition dump and barely any time to deliver it, what Tim was talking about and stuff again. But again, I would have loved to, see Galen Erso learn to lie. Again, tell me, or show me, don't tell me, and all this exposition dump, but I get it. We're in a 2-hour Star Wars where there's so much stuff going on, and we got to get to the final act with all the cool stuff that's happening visually. But
also, what? I know it's your daughter, and you're gonna have like endless love and support for your daughter, and you're gonna believe that she is the most special boy in the universe, of course. But like him to just be like, you can probably do this incredibly like specifically skilled task, my daughter, just because you're my kid.
That's assuming a lot of someone you haven't
so much
seen
of who
in
she's
like
ended up since she was what, like 6? I don't know.
But they did leave her with Saw Gerrera specifically because
again,
they knew that he could train her and stuff.
Would have been sold a little bit more on that if we saw more of that, though.
I will say the thing that I notice about this scene is this is where we start this whole movie, but particularly this scene is where we start something that I think has become a problem for a lot of people with Star Wars, which is the story is about filling in a hole from a line that was said once in a thing X number of years ago. And this scene really drives it home. Like, this is fun. Like, this is a clever use of it. Why was it so easy to take out the Death Star? It was so easy to take out the Death Star because Like, why didn't, there have been so many jokes about what's with that vent in the Death Star? How come they can just shoot through that vent in the Death Star?
Yeah, they just
This
left
is-
the convenient off button.
Yeah, this is a good use of filling in those holes, I think, this movie.
I agree.
But this is where I think the idea of all of these stories now can just fill in these holes came from. And I think that's something that's become a little tiring for people in Star Wars.
100%.
And that's why I like that they're, we're moving towards more original stuff on the horizon, because it's like, tell me more new stories. It's okay that somebody flubbed a line in 1983. It's okay. It's fine. So I will say, watching a Death Star blast from ground level is one of the big payoffs of this film.
Yes,
and this
cool
is a
as shit.
really intense shot.
And there's like them, like where he's like, I still have to make them the calculations. I'll make them for you, and they blast off, and then like it pans to the entire explosion going from like the planet up to space. Also a dope
Very
shot, and it looks like
That's my favorite shot of the Death Star, is the silent pan up from Jeddah to the
okay.
Death
That's
Star
incredible.
hanging over. It's
I mean,
beautiful.
this whole scene is incredible. Now, obviously, Saw Gerrera is like, "Hey, I'm staying behind.
Now,
This
this
is how
is
I
the
die."
first time I'm going to agree with y'all. I don't understand Saw Gerrera in this moment. Now, he does say, like, there's very little of me left. There's barely any of me left. There's very little of me left. Like,
So if he was like dying and they would have had to wait to try and save him, like, don't bother. There's very little left of me, but he's just standing there, man.
this is a dude who 10 hours ago was still so dedicated to seeing this through to the end that he hooked a boar gullet up to a dude's brain. And now he's like, I'm done
Fuck
running.
it.
Why?
Why?
That's the only thing
Boo.
I don't understand from Saw Gerrera in this movie.
And
The rest is a
once
hundo.
again,
The rest
It's-
flawless.
it's the first death in this movie, which will be of many to come, where we didn't emotionally care about the character. I really do think that Forrest Whitaker's performance is very fun and it's very enjoyable to watch.
I love
It's
it.
weird, but it's like I enjoy it in the way that I enjoy Palpatine, where it's like, this doesn't make any freaking sense, but like, go off, King. But when he stands there and he's like, I'm going down with the ship, peace, guys. I'm like, I wish that broke my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I was so sad to see him stay behind and had this, like, I wish that I was grieving for Jin. I wish that I was grieving for him, and I'm not.
Well, think about this, Sage. Who's going to comb more off the Gregorian's fur now? Now that makes you a little sad, doesn't it? Who's going to clean all 4 of those tubes
God.
for both of those egg mates?
Do you assume they can't clean their own tubes and that he's been doing it? You think he's been cleaning the
They
two
could
tubes?
clean their own tubes, but he just cares about them so much. Now, does that make you sad?
No, don't tell. Show me Saw Gerrera cleaning the two tubes.
Krennic's best line, my favorite thing, Ben Mendelsohn looking at blowing up a holy city. Even the Empire calls it the holy city. And he goes, oh, it's beautiful. He throws the
beautiful.
line away.
Yeah, he does.
It's just, and he throws it away in that perfect way where it's just like, oh, it's everything I ever would have imagined. My beautiful
Right.
Death Star. Oh,
Someone giving him
love it.
flowers.
but also the performance in this scene of we stand here amidst my achievement, not yours. I'm just like, ooh,
Ooh.
I love it. I love
Very
it.
good. That's a very good scene.
And where he's like, it doesn't matter. You fucked up. Galen Erso was the leak. So now this is my Death Star. I'm made out of a computer. Fuck off.
Hell yeah.
So they have to go to Edu. They have to go to Galen's facility. This is where Riz Ahmed gets his moment to sell his character.
One
right?
moment.
We talk about
That's
this.
all he gets.
Oh no, go ahead. Yeah, he gets his one moment to sell his character, and this is where he says, "He said I could get right by myself if I did what was in my heart."
Love it.
In these classic war movies, and once again, I'm not saying it's right that they did the entire style of these classic war movies. This is what you get. You get one guy in the foxhole who gets to say 3 lines about his family back home or what he believes in, and that sells the character to you if the actor can sell it. And Riz Ahmed does so much with just a few lines here. And I really enjoy it. I enjoy this like quiet scene on the ship where they're all kind of coming to terms with what they just saw and how they feel about it.
But they're also questioning what Jin saw, because that's my least favorite part of that is for some reason they spend this time being like, so you haven't seen the hologram? So then I don't
Did
know.
anybody else see it? Anybody else
Right.
see it? And I
Why
sort
are
of
we
get
questioning her? Why are we trusting her to do this? And I understand that you need her as like essentially bait for her father was the idea. But
Mhm.
like this distrust that A never gets hammered out and we know goes away pretty soon is a weird choice for me in this scene where they're all like, I don't
Well,
know. Seems fake.
I think on the part of Cassian, it goes away when he sees what happens on the platform and how the Empire is about to get rid of Galen and his whole team, and then Jin going out to, I think that changes the trust for Cassian. And I think one of the things that's great is that Chirrut trusts her implicitly.
And always knows when someone's lying in theory.
Cassian, they're trying to show us that Cassian is a paranoid spy in this moment. And you're right. It's kind of like, it's here because there should be conflict in this moment. But I do like that they at least give Cassian the line of, I'm not the one you're going to have to convince.
Mhm.
Right? Where
It's weird
Cassian's
that
like, even if I believe you, and I'm not saying I do, we're going to cut to a whole table full of more important people than me that you're going to have to convince.
There's something about this scene that, going back to what I was saying about like the scene itself feeling rushed, of having that be this like talky talk scene, but that it's very important to like the exposition, but then also, the whole place is getting exploded, so we need to get out of here. That being followed up with this kind of lessens it all for me, because that escape sequence starts to feel like an Uncharted set piece moment where it's kind of like, no, at any moment, like the thing's right behind us and we're gonna die. And so it feels so like high stakes that when they start talking about it, it almost feels like they're not talking about something that they just experienced, because
Right.
it felt like they
Because
had it
no
all
one's
under control.
experienced that before. Like, they just escaped a planet killer. Like, and no one, they never have a moment where they're like, yo, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
You know, like,
it's like they kind of let us assume because they know that we know what it is. But it's just like, I feel like movie wise, it doesn't really, that's why the scene doesn't work for me, is because they're questioning the wrong things in that moment, I think.
Do you know who sells this scene to me, actually? Who says almost nothing? Is
K2SO.
Zhang Wen.
Yeah.
Zhang Wen,
Okay.
who
That's fair.
is Bai's malice. Bai's looks completely devastated. And maybe it's because Bai's didn't have to deliver this sort of like expository dialogue in the moment, but he really, I think, sells it in a way where, like, if you watch him during this scene, it's like, yeah. And I think, because we start with Bodhi's thing about I was too late, you feel it from Bodhi.
Yeah.
But you're right, where it's like Jin and Cassian are kind of
unfazed by it.
They're kind of forest for the trees here. You know what I mean? The trees.
Yeah.
The trees.
Also, we're getting to the part. We're getting to the segment where I fucking fall asleep every time. We're getting to Edu. Fucking Edu, man. I just don't know what it is, where like all of the tension is lost here. Really quickly, I just because we're on the ship, we're having these conversations. Cassian's about to get the order of like still kill Urso, like your orders still stand and stuff like that, and like she's gonna call out Cassian for like his orders, his following orders, and all this stuff, which I feel like is a great moment. It's a great back and forth between these characters who have to be a part of a team together and stuff like that, where it's like, why are you just following those orders? And that is lessened by, later on, skipping ahead a little bit, we'll return to it, is when she doesn't call out the people who gave those orders. Instead, she decides to give an inspirational speech to them, which makes no sense for what the second act does. The second act is supposed to be the rebellion failing her, because the rebellion was like, yeah, we're going to blow up the place that you're on right now, and we're going to kill your dad and stuff. And then 10 minutes later, she's like, but I rebel. The rebellion's built on hope. It's like the rebellion just proved to you that they're also a bunch of assholes.
Yeah.
Like it just ignores everything that like.
Both your dads died in like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So many dads. Speaking of which, we are on Edu, where her dad is. The approach sequence, once again, one of my favorite Star Wars sort of things. I love that Edu, where they mine this Kyber, is like, it feels spiritually out of whack. It's like constantly in storm. It's dark. It's lit from within by the Kyber crystal. This approach sequence is just so well done. I love it so much. Now, there is something that I think is very funny about this whole thing. So they crash. They're like, okay, well, we're going to go get another ship. You come with me. And, Cassian's clearly making excuses for Jyn to stay behind because he doesn't want her to see what's about to happen. Yo, Disney Plus believes so hard in HDR. This whole sequence is so dark on my television. Like I can't see a goddamn thing. I had to turn the backlight on my goddamn TV up so high just to see what was going on.
To see any sort of emotional performance here, which which is all being carried on Cassian right now, because he's in this conflict of like, will he or won't he? And again, I think one of the reasons why the second act, this kind of like in the middle before we get into the big fight of will he or won't he kill Galen, all of the tension falls away from me and I fall asleep because I'm endlessly bored, is because he's not going to do it. You get the one moment at the beginning of the movie where he's like, yeah, blammo, I'm going to kill this random dude. But I don't feel like we saw enough of that, of like him maybe killing someone he actually spent a lot of time with or something to make you doubt of like, oh, he might kill him. Oh, he might kill him right now. Scene? And there's none of that in here, almost like the entire movie where it's like, oh, are they going to die? They're going to die. No, you're just thinking the entire time, yeah, they're all going to die. You're thinking this entire scene, he's not going to kill Galen.
Do you know what I think would have helped this scene a bit? Would have been like, and I'm not faulting the man, but I wanted more musical stings and cues for like the tension of pointing the sniper rifle and the decision. I wanted like a little bit more of like a, just a little something of music,
like almost like the beginning of The Dark Knight, where you have like just that string. I like that.
Where he's just like looking, and I want more of like, okay, well, that shot he couldn't take because of a natural thing, and this shot he couldn't take because emotionally he couldn't handle it, or there was something, you know what I mean? And I feel like a little bit more of like tighter editing and a little bit of like tighter musical stuff, I think would have really helped in that moment. I don't know.
More tension. I agree.
But I love the idea
because I feel like the tension came more from the dynamics of play of not just the Andor stuff, but mainly the like elements of the rebellion coming in and the what the Empire was doing, and like how much Fennec didn't give a shit about what was going on. And I thought they did a good job going back and forth between those elements that I might not have ever been questioning, is Andor going to kill him or not? But it was more like, oh shit, how's this going to play out? How's this going down? Like, I think the scene works.
Yeah, I think a lot of it works because of the interplay between Mendelsohn and Mikkelsen fucking crushing it.
I will give it that tension I like a little bit. But emotionally, again, I feel like at this point, a lot of our heroes are still kind of non-characters. So when it's like, oh shit, are they going to survive this rebellion assault on this base? It's like, I don't care. I feel like when Jyn sees her dad die because of the rebellion, I should be like, yeah, the rebellion kind of sucks right now, man. And I should be angry with Jyn, but I'm not, because she's barely angry. What's happening?
I like seeing the X-Wings come in and like seeing them from the ground level.
Again, visually sick as hell, especially when like
I'm not even talking about visuals. I'm saying like even like the implications of like, yo, the good guys are flying in, and it's like we can question like where the commands came from, whatever. There are people, good guys, we know them to be good guys, piloting the X-Wings and coming in and shooting all the shit up, where the other good guys we know are there. And I feel like that alone like added to the boys out in the town having their drinks, having the conversation they're having, like that to me is where the tension lies. Is like all these elements at play in this one little tiny thing that like motherfuckers we know are gonna die in their beautiful raincoats.
Top 3 Donnie Yen moments Columbia also sportswear. When he does his like weird bow and he's not even looking, he's just like kind of listening for the TIE fighters and just blows one up nonchalantly.
He does the thing with his hand because it's cold and wet, and he's like trying to focus in the force, and he pulls out like whatever, his not bowcaster. He also, I love his line in this where Baze goes, or where he goes, does he look like a killer? And Baze goes, he's got the face of a friend.
That's a good line. It's a very good line.
It's such a good line where Cassian's, and then I also love where he's like, I'm going to follow Jin because her path is clear.
Yeah.
I love that. Everybody else, you don't know what you're doing.
I don't think it actually is clear, but I like him saying that.
Maybe he knows it more than she does, but I also question Draven. Okay, so okay. So Draven, they're going into this area and it's like, hey, send a message to the rebellion, tell them to go to Scarif. I can't. We're in the middle of Imperial space. I can't send a message right now. 3 minutes later, Draven goes, I haven't heard from my buddy Cassian Andor in like 3 minutes. Should we send the entire Rebel fleet? What?
This guy's
Draven.
a Tim if I've ever seen one.
Tim with 2 M's.
Draven's like, he's got an itchy trigger figure, this guy, Draven. You know what I mean? So I love that he's like, tell him to hold off. Jin's on the platform. You know, they're the moment between Jin and Krennic. There are 2 moments in this film where Jin and Krennic 3 where Jin and Krennic nearly shoot each other, and they get interrupted. And I love this one where they're about to shoot each other, and it's just like, boom. It's so intense. And I also do love that Krennic, as they're carrying him away, Krennic has one of those Star Wars moments that we see a lot recently where it's like, I have enough time to glare at you and be like, oh, you.
But not enough to kill you.
Not enough to shoot.
I can't walk through this fire, even though I've walked through fire before, but not right now in this moment.
I'm very mad at you.
Okay. A weird thought about the following thing where Jin runs to her dad, right? And she's sitting there and he's the water on his face. And I have so much to tell you. And this is a beautiful scene.
Yes.
But is it funny to anyone else that the image her father now has of her is completely wrong? Like, he probably is like, wow, she's been with the rebellion all this time. Incredible. She's been here fighting and she got my message.
I've never thought of that before.
This is the girl I raised. And she's really just been a petty criminal that just got to the rebellion like yesterday.
Hey, she came when it was important. And I think as a parent, you love that.
She got kidnapped too.
But also, yeah, you're right. And also, I hope that my parents have just as fake an impression of me before they go. Do you know what I mean?
Like, he sends the message to be like, I know you're out there fighting the good fight when she was not. And then he's like, you did it. You're here.
She was in prison with a Blutonian. A dirty Blutonian who had a coat full of parasites. I do enjoy thinking about how uncomfortable it was for Mads Mikkelsen to lie with his knee bent like that. You know the way his knee's bent when he's lying on the ground? He's got his knee bent backwards the wrong way when he's lying there.
That always freaks me out because I'm really squeamish about like kneecaps and stuff too. That not a fan.
It's not broken. It's clearly his actual leg, but he falls in sort of a ragdoll position where like his foot is up by his head and his knee is the furthest part down. And I'm just like, how long did you have to lie like that, Mads Mikkelsen? That's acting. They get back into the ship. Bodhi lands the ship and says, well, K2 says, well done. You're a rebel now. That's very nice. And then cheer it.
Very nice.
That's
very
no
nice.
Condolences.
This is a very nice sentiment, I think. Cheer it back on the ship, grabs Jin's hand because he can sense that she's about to confront Cassian about this. Cassian just gaslight gatekeep girl boss here. It's just like, oh, you're in shock. I've seen it 100 times before. You're crazy. I don't know anything. Now, he is a spy who's trying to keep his orders secret, but at the same time, come on, my dude. We know why you were there.
Why are you making this lead character that we're supposed to root for until he dies so hateable? I don't think Cassian's done almost anything likable this whole episode, this whole movie.
But also on the side of Jin, where it's like, what I was mentioning earlier, where she is pushing back against him. You shouldn't be a dog following orders. Stormtroopers follow orders, which I love. I love that dynamic. I love that infighting. And it's like, dog, like, you're fighting a cog in the system. Maybe, like, you should have a word with the system. And again, when she has a word with the system, she's like, let's do an inspirational speech. And it's like,
Yeah, she's mad at
why
Cassian,
don't you
and yet
fight
when
the
she
people
goes
who
to the
gave
rebellion,
the orders, you psychopath? What is happening here, man?
That is odd.
Again, her character arc
I-
makes no goddamn sense in this fucking movie. It drives me
I
insane.
agree with her fighting with Cassian here because Cassian is the one that she has had no choice but to trust. There is
Yes.
a personal level of betrayal between her and Cassian that doesn't exist
Yeah.
with her in like the corporate rebellion.
They've
that
saved
I
each
do
other's lives a
understand.
couple times now. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
so there is a trust between them, and he's been clearly keeping that were his orders. You know what I mean? Like he could have told her. He could have done anything, and he didn't. So I don't mind her in this, but I do mind him in his gatekeep gaslight girl boss era, because he never makes up for it in a way that I feel like on a personal level is cool.
Well, he does get the entire squad to go with her to Scarif.
That is a good point.
Yeah.
You
He
know,
does back her up.
Is it for her?
well,
I mean, it's all
I
about
mean, if not for
direction.
her, I feel like I
For
can't think of
believing
any
she's right.
any other motivation for him in that moment, you know?
she
You know,
gives
the
the speech at
galaxy.
the table. But before we get to the speech at the table, let's take a short trip to Mustafar, the lava planet and home of Castle Vader. I'd like to
Not to
discuss.
be confused for Castlevania.
I'd like to discuss Van Eye, who announces Krennic, the weird old guy in the cloak,
Yes.
Fun.
who his backstory is he was an Imperial inspector on Mustafar who was driven crazy by lava fumes and now considers himself a devoted acolyte of Darth Vader.
Hell the
Sure.
fuck yes. And here's the thing. In
He's
the past,
good.
I thought I disliked this scene because I felt like
Great scene.
it lessened the
There's one reason it's bad.
that lessens the thing later on. Oh no, Tim, we're gonna fight about this. But I
love
have
that we're
written in
just
my
completely on different sides
yeah,
of this movie.
I wrote down my notes here. Vader's palace, sick visually. This scene is dumb,
So sick.
fun, and I'm here for it. The shadow of Vader overshadowing
shadow's cool.
Krennic to remind you how small he is in
Yes.
the entirety of the Empire. When
I will
the entirety
say-
so far, Krennic feels like he's the big man in this entire show. I fucking love that. I like that Vader because I like this cameo in the scene because of how it ties into Krennic's politics story. It makes sense. It's cheesy. It's Star Wars. It makes more sense than the thing that we get later that I think diminishes the protagonist and the story that's about the protagonist.
Yes.
And then we get Vader being a sassy bitch, which is the most Vader thing. I hope you don't choke on your aspirations. Are you kidding me? That is some classic
This
Darth
is-
Vader stuff, and it's 10 out of 10. It's perfect.
This is
Tim,
a perfect scene.
That is OG. That's original trilogy
Hold
Vader
on.
right there,
Let's
Tim.
talk
Come
about
on.
then let's talk about original trilogy Vader. Name for me all the other times that Darth Vader makes puns.
I can't name them off the top of my head, but I know that they're there.
Oh, is he a real pun guy? Is he
yeah, he
original?
is.
He's a real pun guy, and he wears rainbow suspenders, and he has the little horn, and he goes honky honky.
See,
You don't
I
like sand.
I think that the start of this scene is incredible. I agree
too.
on the shadow. I think that Krennic in this scene is amazing.
I think Vader should be
that he is
taller.
trying so hard to like be tough, and he looks like a piss baby because of it. Like it is clear that he is squirming and lying over his fear. And I think that Krennic is amazing in this. I think this might be the least intimidating Vader has ever been.
Interesting.
He stands there and he goes like this.
Oh,
And
but
I'm
the
not
point
joking.
is
That
very
literally
classic.
happens. No, but the way he does it is completely different. There is a powerful Vader point, and I am a huge Vader fan. The way he does it in this is silly. It's look, we know there's different people in the suit for Vader. We
Yeah.
know that it changes. We know that this is not the same. This visual movement, the towering, imposing presence of Vader is not there in this scene. He stands there and he goes, "Oh, are you late?" And then he makes a pun and he leaves. What?
Okay, first of all,
Great.
I think number one, Vader should be taller in this scene.
I agree.
That's
I
fair.
keep looking. I
I think the
looking at
shadow
Vader's
makes
height.
up for it. I think the shot with the shadow makes up for it a little bit.
The shadow.
Krennic's
Listen,
almost as tall as him.
you're there.
Vader's got, like,
You're
3
there.
inches on him.
You're shooting all day. You can make Vader taller. The shadow's great. But here's what I'm going to
Technology's
say.
there.
If we
The
can make
technology
CG
is there.
Tarkin, we can make Vader taller.
Yeah, Vader like Krennic should be up to Vader's chest box.
Mm-hmm.
Chest box.
Yep.
And then, but he's almost looking in Vader's eyes. And that's why I think like the point to me is almost the same point he does to Leia originally. Like when he like in A New Hope, he's almost like he's doing like the disappointed point.
Which is a little different when it's your kid.
He's so small. Well, it's also different when Vader is towering over Leia and bent over almost and pointing down. Whereas like Krennic's like, I don't know, Krennic was wearing his tall shoes that day. And because he was like, I'm going to have a meeting with Lord Vader. And so I'm going to look Lord Vader right in the eye. I don't know what happened there. I will say this. I like this Vader scene better than the end Vader scene.
Interesting.
Because this is a Vader character scene that is integrated into this story.
And it fits with the actual plot, unlike the second Vader scene.
Whereas the Vader scene at the end was clearly, it felt like an addition to me.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it when we get there.
The point I'm rewatching it as we do this, it's because the Vader point is this powerful, like strong-armed point down at Leia when he's doing it. And I'm watching it right now as we speak. I have this pulled up.
Yeah.
He's going like this.
Yeah, he's doing gun fingers.
He's got like a little flick in the wrist that's like so
again,
silly.
he's sassy.
So,
he's sassy.
Why is Vader sassy?
Because he's
Anakin wasn't sassy. Vader is not sassy.
Sage just had to point it out.
Oh,
you know, another classic Vader move. Tim Geddes just did it, everybody.
Yeah.
You got puns like Vader.
I think it's great. The only thing that I'm like, do I love it or hate it, is the choke on your aspirations line.
Yeah.
And it's the type of thing that makes me go, ha! But I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing. You know, I don't know that Darth Vader should ever be making me do that. No, for sure.
I think Vader's allowed to have a little fun with this guy. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't mind it as much.
He's usually like this, maybe not to the extent of the choke on your aspirations, but to Imperial officers. It's like the Gordon Ramsay where he's very caring to the kids, but then when it's like Hell's Kitchen and it's these people who say they're the best of the best and he's a complete asshole, like that's who he is to his Imperial officers, where he's like, y'all are supposed to be a fucking part of the Empire, but I see you guys failing over and over again. I'm going to kill y'all left and right in Empire Strikes
I'll say
Back,
this.
You know?
Vader
Here's
looks at
what I'll
Krennic
say.
and goes, "What are you? An idiot sandwich."
Yes.
I'll say this. The only part that I thought was weird was that he moonwalks out after he delivers the line. I thought that was strange. Like, he's so proud of himself that he moonwalks out. I thought that was strange and they didn't need to leave it in. Meanwhile, back on Yavin 4, we are the Rebellion Council just cannot agree on anything right now. Are we at war? Do we want to be at war? We better not be at war. Is Jin lying? Let the girl speak. Does this really exist? And if it does exist, what do we do about it? Let the girl speak. Listen. And if they do have what they're proposing, do they fight it? What is their course of action? And Jin tells him, we got to do it. We got to do it. Send your best soldiers to Scarif. Rebellions are built on hope. We got to do this. And Mon Mothma's like, baby, you know I want to do this. Mon Mothma's like, baby, you know all I've wanted to do for fucking 30 years is fucking blow this shit up. Are we doing this or are we not doing this?
Not doing this.
The rebellion just killed her dad. They doubt her and her validity, and she's suddenly this beaming light to try to inspire them. My note I have written here, I get where they wanted to go with her story, but it's so cram-packed in a 2-hour movie with so many other moving parts that her character arc feels rushed. Instead of a gradual reawakening into the person she's meant to be, she goes from her closed-off character to her leadership one so quickly it feels like a 180 and is unearned. This is how I felt since, honestly, the first time I saw the movie, and I still feel it to this day. And again, I think it would have been better if it was a Disney Plus series, but again, I get it. Disney Plus wasn't around back then.
Even a line or two in this soliloquy that said something like, I have less reason to believe in you than anybody, but I know how important this is. You know what I mean? Something along those lines.
That could have gone a long way.
In that soliloquy, I think would have gone a long way. But unfortunately, they don't like her. They don't like her soliloquy any more than y'all do, and they say, "Get fucked." And so she walks away to get fucked.
And this is also taken this as well.
I will say, out of this whole scene, do you know who I love? I love a calamari. I love fucking
You
Radis.
knew it was gonna be that.
Yeah, I love him
Oh, we
too.
get a lot
Radis is
more.
in.
Because he's
Radis is
also
like, "We gotta
like,
do
let's
this."
go. And like later on when they're like, oh, he already left. Him and his team left. They're already on their way to
Fucking
fight.
going, man.
Yeah.
The other problem is
Radis fucking snuck out. He got into his fishbowl and
with
fucked
her
off.
with her soliloquy. That's kind of like them bookending. The character arcs are done. Now we're gonna go fight the bad guy, and we are an hour and 17 minutes into this movie, man.
Yeah,
we wrapped up character arcs in an hour and 17 minutes,
there's
man.
more arcing to do. There's more arcing to
Where?
go.
No arcing has happened
Where?
yet.
Call it
All
out.
they
Call
do
me
is
out,
die.
because There's
Start.
arcing happening.
The last act is this them. All right, I'm gonna go die.
That's it.
later.
The last act is
But they do
fighting
it
and
so
dying.
well. They die
No,
so
they
beautifully.
don't.
No,
One of
they
them
do.
dies
They
from an
die.
explosion, and then 30 seconds later, a guy looks over and he's like, "Oh man, my friend probably died in that explosion. Oh, I died in an explosion. It's repetitive. It's lame. The one I cared about most was
That's
K2SO
war.
because
It's
again,
war, baby.
Alan
War.
Tudyk, goat, absolutely goated.
All right,
also
calm down.
in
We're
this
not even there.
scene-
We're not
in
there
this
yet. We're not
scene,
there yet. Calm down.
More telling, not showing with this final Kazian speech before they leave the base. Sorry, go ahead.
Right. So first of all, shout out to the call over the intercom for General Syndulla. The rebels are on the premises. The Ghost is in multiple shots in this film.
And Chopper was supposed to be in this.
Chopper
right?
is here.
Oh,
no,
he-
and I
I
know that
always miss
I
him.
know
I
that
al-
Chopper's in it. Do you know why I know? They
'Cause-
used our Chopper. They used the Star Wars show Chopper.
Yeah.
Because there was no
That's so
live
cool.
action Chopper. So they were like, you
So
built one,
sick.
right? So shout out to Michael McMasters and Mike Senna, who built the live action Chopper for us.
Mike
and then
Mike.
we lent it to Disney Studios. You're welcome, Disney Studios.
Hell yeah.
And now we must talk about my least favorite Star Wars trope, which is Star Wars being real bad at explaining how they got their name. We have, oh, you're alone, Solo, Han Solo. We have I'm
I
Rey,
like that moment.
Rey Star Wars. We have all of these occasions
like
in
that
which
moment.
this happens. I hate it every single time. And
What's
this one
your
is,
call
the name?
number, Sage?
It's Rogue. Rogue
Rogue.
One.
There is no Rogue.
Rogue One.
And it's so weird
There is
too.
now. Okay.
But there is still isn't. Even at I'm pretty sure Anthony,
mind
at the beginning of episode 4,
mind
there
it.
is no Rogue Squadron. Luke is part of Red Squadron, bro. And I don't
Yep.
think they call for Rogue Squadron. Rogue Squadron isn't a thing until Empire, I'm pretty sure, because that's Luke leading Rogue Squadron.
Look, so here's the thing. If you're
It's
part
lame.
of Rogue One and the entire squadron dies, you're probably not going to line up to be part of Rogue Squadron. It probably took a couple years before people were like, okay,
That was
let's
a
call our
cool
squadron Rogue Squadron to honor the people who fell. You don't want the day after all of Rogue Squadron dies, you don't want to be like, hey, congratulations, you're promoted to the
That's
head of
fair.
Rogue
It's
Squadron.
still a lame
How on
moment, though.
Titanic too?
Oh, thank you.
Titanic 2, put me on.
Why is that how they got their name? Why
'Cause-
is it?
'cause
It's
why
always
not?
the same cadence of, uh-oh, I don't have an answer for this. You've asked me a question that has put me on the spot, and I go, here's half of it. And then the other half.
See, my
Well,
thing is, I'm
okay,
with you
I
that I
will
don't think
say-
it's
no,
great.
no, I
This
will
doesn't
say-
bother me in a way the other two, I think, are actually bad choices.
Okay, listen.
Yeah.
Rey Skywalker, I'm still trying
Terrible.
to wrap my head around. I don't.
Unearned.
But Han Solo being like, I'm alone, and then somebody at immigration and signing up for the military goes, great, so your name's Solo.
One of my least favorite choices in Star Wars history.
I
Period.
actually really
Hard stop.
love it.
I don't
really love it
I'm somewhere in the
because-
middle. I get what they were going for it. I still think the cadence and delivery of it wasn't great.
One of
The
the worst
reason
things
I
I've ever
love
read.
it is I know specifically that the Kasdans wrote it as like a metaphor for people after World War II coming in through immigration and just having their names changed, having their like names given to them, being like, congratulations, you're part of the army. Congratulations, you live in America now. This is your name because we don't care. Here's your gun. Go fight.
Don't do
and
that
I do
with
like
Han
that.
Solo though. When he like that happened with my fiance Gia's family, and she no
Mhm.
longer uses that last name.
Yeah.
But Han Solo goes
he doesn't
by
know
that
his
for the
last
rest
name.
of his. But she's like, you know what? Dope enough. I'm gonna stick with it to the point that people just refer to me as Solo. You know
But
what? I just
also-
convinced myself it's pretty fucking cool. Pretty fucking
Well,
cool.
yeah,
I'm changing my last name to Solo. Deal it.
Because also, come on, the space loner's last name is Solo. That's not his name.
Yeah,
He gave himself
that was
that
always
name.
a fake
But
name.
giving himself that name would have been cool as shit. I'm cool with it being a fake name. I don't think that needs to be his birth name. I just think he could have gotten it in a way cooler way.
Welcome to Solo, a Star Wars story rewatch.
One
No,
day.
I can't do that conversation on top of this one. All I'll say is when they leave, I forget why I wrote this down, and it's a very important note. Jimmy Smits is so good. I forget
Jimmy
where
Smits is so good.
He's so good. I think it's the moment where he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna," or maybe it's.
I would
later.
trust her with my life.
Yes.
I would trust her with my life.
Yes.
It's my freaking daughter, and she's the most capable person in the entire galaxy.
Love that. Wonderful, fantastic. I wrote that down as one of my favorite moments. I love Bail Organa, and I think Bail Organa is precious and perfect.
Just more Bail Organa at all times. I do like the whole Cassian thing saying we've all done terrible things for the rebellion. It's time to make
Necessary.
good. Or if we've all done these terrible things, why aren't you allowed to do this thing that you wanted? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I do like that a little bit. And I do like that I'm not used to people sticking around when things go bad. Welcome home. That's kind of nice.
Yeah,
That's a nice exchange. So let's talk about Scarif, the #1 vacation destination in the galaxy.
One of the
Scarif?
most unique live action planets we've seen, and I adore it. I think it's just
Literally-
visually dope.
It's a Mario Kart track, and they're like, "Fuck it, we're doing it," and I
It's
appreciate that they
Koopa
did.
Beach.
Yep.
It's beautiful. I would go, listen, you get the feeling that before the Empire was there to build all their secrets, it was a pretty dope place to go. So I do love there's another K2 line that I put out where it's like, where they're trying to get in, and it's like, well, this ship is an Imperial ship, so it should have a call sign and we should be able to get in. Well, what if the code doesn't work? It's like, oh, then we all die in the cold vacuum of space. And K2's like, not me. I can survive in
I'm good.
space.
Yeah. Oh man.
This is where you start seeing that there are multiple versions of this edit where Jyn and Cassian became more of a love story in Act 3. There's a moment where she walks by him on the bridge and they give this little look to each other that's like,
What's the
Hey.
weird, more retroactive love story? This one, or the trio love story in Revenge of the Sith with Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Padme?
Interesting. I thought you were going to say Rey and Finn, the comparison.
Oh, and Rey and
Obi-
Finn,
but
which
Obi-Wan
is just
didn't know
Zuko
he
and
was,
Katara, but not nearly as well done.
but Obi-Wan didn't know he was in that. Like that was like Obi-Wan wasn't like
Yeah.
Obi-Wan wasn't there.
Yeah.
Like
I don't know. I think Obi-Wan was maybe the only one there. We'll get into that another time. I agree that this is weird. I understand that moment on the beach where it feels kind of romantic, and we'll get to that later. But at this time, I'm just like, why now? In the
Yeah.
moment you're about to die, everything becomes romantic. I'll kiss whoever's around me if I'm about to die, 100%.
sure.
But
But
at this moment, this little like,
Yeah.
uh-oh, am I in love with you?
But
Yeah.
the thing that,
Unearned.
because they cut any romantic stuff that did or would happen out, you do get a vibe between the two of them. Like it could be romantic, but it could also be like,
We're just two
hey,
people going to our
we
death.
trust each other.
Yeah.
We trust each other now, and we're doing this. We're both on board.
We're in this shit.
Mhm.
And
There's no turning back.
And again, in this moment, this is where I wrote down my note of like all of them, not just Jyn and Cassian. The rest of them, you feel it where it's like they have a good idea that they're going to their death here. She gives the speech of make 10 feel like 100, which is absolutely absurd. I think the other reason on a character level it doesn't work for me is that, again, like I said earlier, you're constantly have on your mind that these people are going to die. Even in the scene, they know that they're going into their death. It's always looming, and you don't get enough time to fall in love with anybody with the characters to forget about that. And like I said earlier, I think maybe before the show or at the beginning of the show, Star Wars Rogue One is Halo Reach. And the reason Halo Reach works so well is because that is a 9-hour game where you spend a good 6.5 hours before any character dies. And the first character on your team that dies comes out of nowhere. They're sniped so nonchalantly, and then you're rudely waking up to these characters that you fell in love with for the first 2/3 of the story that like, oh, right. They have to die.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I completely disagree. So So
Fight.
here we are during the big fight, after the big speech. I do like "Good luck, little sister" is a line that always sticks out to me here from Baze to Jin. I don't know why. I don't know how I
Because
feel
they
about
didn't
it.
earn that relationship.
Yeah.
Like all the others, they didn't earn that, and they tried to put in one that was like, "We're family," and it's like, since when?
There's a lot of
We've
stuff
known each
that
other
I-
for like 7
It's a single, like,
hours.
siblings
There's a-
moment, and like it could be 7 hours if we've seen them develop that dynamic real quick. They
Yeah.
barely interacted.
There's a lot of stuff that y'all don't like about these relationships that I kind of let pass, but there's something about that line where I'm with you, where I'm like, that line, the little sister, because it never comes up before. Little sister is that's a big term to give to somebody in a moment.
If he had said friend, that already would have been a big swing because it's the first time you're acknowledging that I view you as a friend. And I think it would have had an impact that was cool. It would be like, I want you to know in this moment that I am your friend, and that communicates a level of trust, and that I am here for you, and that I care about you. But it's still new. Like,
Now, what
them
if I
even
told
being
you?
friends is news.
What if I told you in the first draft he calls her Sugar Bear?
Are you
No.
fucking kidding me? No.
Is that real?
No.
No, it's not real. No, it's not
Oh.
real.
I was
Why
so
would he
stressed.
I
call her
believed
Sugar
you.
Bear?
I
Dude,
trusted
but that's
you.
something that I
Roguie.
would have
You
seen,
guys
man.
read
Truck,
that
and then all of a sudden, no
We're
integrity.
all so mad.
Because I was after I've gotten that script. Woman walks in. Tits.
Sugar Bear. Oh, I
With
love
some
it. I
hot
love you
stuff.
so much.
What? This is your dad.
So they're heading into the base now. Jin and Cassian are in their cool Imperial uniforms. There's
I
something
love the
that's always just so
infiltration.
cool.
Yes.
There's something so cool about a rebel in an Imperial uniform. Like, Imperial uniforms, I think, look good on everybody, but when you know it's not a bad guy wearing it, and you're
It's
like,
so
ooh,
dope.
wink, wink, nudge,
Again,
nudge,
and
y'all are
like, and
attractive.
another premise of this movie was the kind of like espionage we're infiltrating, and we barely get any of it. I wanted more, man. Like even them just sneaking into the base, I wish we could have like stayed in those moments a little more. I think somewhere in here too, we get another chef's kiss shot of Krennic, because he's also coming. He's also coming to Scarif to find out about these Galen Erso leaks. His ship flying through the kind of like wing of the Star Destroyer is so dope, and like kind of gives like the urgency and like, I don't give a shit how closely I fly to another ship. Like, I'm more important. I'm the most important. And also seeing the force field entrance, which I feel like is something that up until now in live action Star Wars like media we had not really seen, and I just love that whole concept and it kind of being the centerpiece for the dogfighting later on. It's so
The shield gate is a very, very clever device to use, story device, and also just a clever device if you need to protect a planet. So we have everybody on here. One of the things that I like is that K2 has a different walk cycle and cadence than the other Imperial droids. When you see another Imperial droid walk by, he looks like a robot, but K2 walks like a person. So they have this. There's a little thing that I want to shout out. There are some stormtroopers that are talking about stuff as they're setting up the charges, and they say the T-15s have been marked obsolete. It's about time. This is something that is a joke between everybody in the Loop group that plays stormtroopers. Particularly happens a lot between David Collins and Sam Witwer when they play stormtroopers. And they always talk about the T-15, the T-16. I hear the T-17s are coming out. And it's just this dumb joke that they do in every movie because they've always done it. It's from the original trilogy, like somebody says it. But now they do it in every movie, and they make sure they increment the number correctly according to where you are in the timeline. And they just do it off the cuff, and it's just a fun little thing.
Yeah.
So, director, what brings you to Scarif? You know, I'm going to find everything that Galen Erso did. Then we have, like, we need a map. And I love that droids hacking things, which is called slicing in the Star Wars universe. They don't hack, they slice.
So cool.
I like that it looks like the lockpicking mini game from something Bethesda would make every time.
100%. Yeah.
It's always
Nailed
like, that's how they get data, and I love it.
I love how much shit in Star Wars is just because, well, that's how it was before. It's like R2 little droid thing did the little thing. That's how droids communicate with other machines now. It's like, all right, cool.
and it looks cool. And why would we change it?
Exactly.
It looks
exactly.
cool.
It's the same thing with the Jedis. It's like, oh, they wear the robes. Why? Well, they wore them on Tatooine in episode 4, so I guess they all wear robes. It's like, yeah, sure. This is how it works.
That shouldn't. But so the distraction charges are blown as Krennic is telling everybody that he wants all of the logs that Galen Erso ever said ever in the history of ever.
And I love the panning shot, right? And you get like it's behind his back, and you see him kind of like slowly react to each explosion going off. And again, this is specifically where I wrote my note of like, I would have loved to have a series to see more of his career built up. So this moment where he's like, I've had my plans taken away from me. Daddy Vader is like on the edge with me. All of this, like this is my last time to like fix something, and it's the rug's pulled out from under him. I think this moment would have hit a little bit more if we had spent a little bit more time with it. But I still, in its own right, I think it's still a great, the way he reacts and the way he yells at everybody immediately. It's a really cool moment.
Mendelsohn plays it beautifully. I love it. We cut to Tarkin, and it's really funny because you see even behind the cold CGIs of Tarkin, you see that he's willing to let Scarif and Krennic go down.
Yeah.
He's willing to lose. You can tell that he's kind of willing to lose Scarif because he's
like,
tired
oh, that's
of
where all
Krennic.
the secrets are too, right?
Yeah, he's
Fucking
like,
blow those up.
Well, let's get rid of those secrets. Let's get rid of this guy that's a pain in my ass, and let's see what happens from there. I don't know. I'm made of computers. Now, when they find out that the Imperial ship is gone and that Radis is gone and everybody's gone, they cut to a really lovely shot of Mon Mothma smiling that I really enjoy. Like when it's like, well, we gotta scramble the fleet to join them on Scarif. We have no choice now. And Mon Mothma's like, yes, begun this Star War has.
It's great. She's great. I can't wait
really
for us to get more of her.
I know.
Oh, she's so good. We also get our R2 and 3PO compulsory appearance, which I enjoy.
Yes.
When they break into the Imperial Records Chamber, I love the 2001 A Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick, fucking clean, mid-century, fucking, there's no reason for the visual metaphor of this for data, but I love it. Everything about this is not like, it's this giant tower core of data, right? And in order to retrieve the drive and the files that you want, you don't just tell it like, hey man, get me this drive. You have to grab this like UFO grabber game,
it's the crane game.
Handle. Yeah, and you've got to like maneuver it, and it's just this very physical Star Wars thing that I love.
They're like, okay, it's going to be the most Space Odyssey design thing we've ever seen in Star Wars, but who's going to design the top part at the top of the ladder? Bowser himself. We're going to make sure that we have a death trap where the little hole just has to slice you every second.
Well, it's like the city in this. It always reminds me of the city in the clouds where Luke is trying to like get up, and there's that like thing that that trap door that goes in and out. I forget so like funny. Where in here like the fleet's kind of coming. I forgot
Don't
about
worry,
the old.
I got you.
Okay,
I got you.
okay.
I know exactly
but also
when
you're talking about the them going into the files room, she gave K2SO a blaster. Look at that character growth. Now her character arc's done. Now she gave him a blaster.
Everybody.
It's complete. Now she can go off and die because that's always been in the back of our heads.
They can all die. Everybody gets a blaster and then they get to die. So I want to say that while everybody is fighting on sort of the ground here on Scarif, and the Blue Squadron led by Merrick manages to get in before the gate closes. I love Merrick. Merrick is a dope character because he's just that cool British mustache rebel guy.
Yeah. Also, really great 70s casting there.
70s casting, super great. Gold Leader and Red Leader are meant to be the same ones that they are in A New Hope, which is lovely.
That's like the old footage that they kind of like repurposed and stuff like that. That kind of stuff I like. That I thought was like
fun.
That got me in the feels a little bit just hearing the dorky Red Leader go, Red 5, where are you going there? And of course, we see that
Red 5. Like,
Red 5.
We know that Red 5's got to go.
Yeah,
we know that Red 5's got to go.
Replace him? Who knows? Who knows?
Also, I want to say that when they're fighting the Walker that comes out and somebody says Carabast at, that's Steve Bloom. So the reason he says Carabast is because that's his thing that his character says in Rebels.
Yes.
Also, another incredible shot of this thing coming from the trees.
Yes.
The fight on the beach is one. I mean, this is war movie, and this is the first time we've really seen war movie. I mean, we have the battle at Hoth, right? We've had, some other stuff
Andor.
going on, but this really feels like a classic war movie, or even like a modern Michael Bay sort of war movie, right? Like this is directed to be, we are storming the beach at Normandy, and it really looks that way.
And I like, just with like little lore stuff here, just thinking about timeline and stuff. I like that these look like proto type AT-ATs, and I like how easily they're taken out by X-wings, which is like you can kind of put the connective tissue together, where it's like, oh, there might be a little bit of like data building that they got from this fight, where they're like, oh, those AT-ATs got taken out super easily, so by the time we get to Hoth and Empire, they're beefed up, baby, and they can take an X-wing. They don't give a fuck because they got a shield generator, baby.
But I love Baze finds a big rocket, and he's so happy that he found a big rocket, and he shoots the big rocket, and the AT-AT's just like, no, I'm still coming.
So that shot too, though, it did the Undertaker thing from WWE, where it's like he gets punched and he just like looks back at you, and it's like, oh shit.
I do want to say, as they're going through project names and they're looking for the right
Feed it to me, baby.
name.
I love shit like this. And the moment we're in this place, like, oh, they got so many secrets. Which ones are they gonna tell us?
So, I mean, they do say things like Black Saber. They do say some other stuff, but none of that's been like one-to-one. I can tell you some things that are one-to-one are the project names Stellar Sphere, Mark Omega, and Pax Aurora. Those are different sub-projects that were related to the Death Star that were talked about in the prequel novel Catalyst, which is a good novel if you haven't read it. And then Galen's weapons system had the code name Celestial Power. That was the specific system that Galen was working on. So yeah, there's some fun stuff for you. K2, of course, dies holding off the Imperials and is like, hey, if you can crawl up the very tall ladder.
Climb!
Yeah, but I also just love the thing where he's like, where the troopers come in and he's like, oh, the rebels went that way. And it's like, hey, K2, what's going on? He's like, all right. And then he just beats stormtroopers to death with other stormtroopers.
And the way that the droid is designed, that his arms are just so long, like it just looks great.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, again, K2SO, rest in peace, the homie. Shout out to him one time.
Yeah.
His death is the most heartbreaking for me. And I think, again, shout out to the one and only Alan Tudyk, who gives a great performance. It's just the way he says goodbye and just smashes his body down. That moment is great.
Absolutely. I agree. Most impactful death in the movie.
Chirrut and Baze do it the most for me, but I definitely
I will agree on them as well. I think they're up there. It should be Cassian and Jyn.
Yeah. Speaking of which, everybody's off doing their thing. I mean, at this point, Bodhi's trying to connect to the tower to get the message out.
They gave Bodhi something to do. Oh my God.
He's got to get there.
I like Bodhi.
He's trying to connect everything up to the master switch. But how do we get to the master switch? Well, only a man who can walk with the force can get to the master switch, because there's a lot of shooting happening. The force is with me, and I am one with the force. Chirrut Imwe walks out.
Fucking get it, dude.
And just immediately hits that switch, and then gets it, and then Baze goes out because he's like, absolutely not. Meanwhile, here in this tiny shaft where everybody's climbing, Krennic gets to the shaft. We've got blasters firing. Krennic's a pretty good shot, in all honesty. He's a better shot than most Imperials are.
Yeah.
Like, Krennic hits things. Krennic hits Cassian.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate that moment, man.
And the way he
fake out death.
Oh yeah. I do like how vitriolic it is. The fall too. Like he should have died there. That should have been a nonchalant death, because the more a film treats it nonchalantly, I feel like the more it's like tragic for the viewer. Where it's like, oh my God, he just kind of died like he was just a dude and not the protagonist of a movie. Yeah, and that's I felt like that moment would have been so heartbreaking, and him coming back to just die with Jyn, I felt like lessened that moment 100%.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like it as sort of the closing of their story of trusting and protecting each other, but I get what you're saying. That could have happened also in the shaft.
Thank God. I thought you set it up where you were like, that's interesting. I completely disagree. And then you started.
No. But, as they're climbing up and they're trying to get through, they finally get through to Radis, who's just fucking dope as shit. Radis
So
rules so
fucking
hard.
dope.
You know, TIE fighters, like how many TIE fighters are coming out of this shield ring? Like there are 100 TIE fighters in this shield gate. They're blowing up everybody, and they get this thing that's like, hey, if you can open up this shield, I promise you, we've got everything you need to win this thing. And Radis goes, I got plans.
I got an idea.
Where's the hammerhead shit?
I love, this is such a good, like, I just love it. I love this whole sequence. I love the idea.
Because this is the most Flash Gordon-ass, like, moment in this Star Wars.
Yes. But also it's just like, it feels like last-ditch effort, real kind of military stuff. Like, well, okay, well, if we can push this truck off of this ravine, like, we can hit, you know what I mean? Like,
it's the moment from the Flash Gordon movie where, I forget the character name, where he's like, you can't live forever, dive! And we're like, Radish is just like, give me the fucking hammerhead, smash it into the Star. It's so fucking dope. And just the shot of the hammerhead going into the Star Destroyer later, where the Star Destroyer just wrecks shop of the other one just so easily. And then
it's a great shot.
Both of them crashing into the force field, which is very reminiscent of the one that crashes into Vader's Star Destroyer in Jedi. Fucking sick. It's sick as hell.
Unfortunately, to get that message out, Bodhi became some thermal detonator fodder.
This is for you, Galen.
Cool. So that's kind of a bummer.
Cool.
And we used to say Bodhi Rook died for your gins in the office.
Yeah. Yeah, you did.
That's very good.
Thank you. So I also love here that as they are, we talked about the Galaxy Quest scene where Jin's got to get through like the fucking chomper bits. I also just love Imperial and Star Wars UI, and I want to talk about how when you plug this big data cartridge in, there's a little door that closes, and then there's like, it's not just like from 0 to 100 on a single bar. It's Star Wars. It's chunks of 15 different bars of data that are moving at different speeds. And because why not? Why not just make things look cool? So she gets a notice to reset antenna alignment because nobody's walked out onto a catwalk yet in the Star War. Somebody has to walk out onto a very thin catwalk to end this Star War. And so Jin does it, and she turns around, and who's there? It's Orson Krennic. And they have a very good back and forth. Who are you?
He does the Thanos, like he did this before Thanos does, where he's like, I don't even know who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, who even are you causing me all this trouble?
I honestly love this moment because, like,
great.
He sees his career and his livelihood in the system fall apart, and the entire time he's just kind of like he's thought of it as like random happenstance of like, oh my god, these weird little bugs that are like keep coming after me, but then to like actually have it face to face where she gets to tell him that.
His blustering is amazing. All I've lost is time. The shield, like the shield is closed. You haven't transmitted anything. All I've lost is time. You're gonna die along with this rebellion. And then there's Cassian.
There he is.
There he is. And
he's there.
They did that, and he shoots Krennic, and she's about to like just go off on Krennic, which like, I mean, let her get one shot in on Krennic.
I know.
You know what I mean?
He's like, no, you're too good for that. Come on, let's go. I shot him already.
Well, I think maybe at this point they feel like maybe they're still getting out of there. They're going to help people. But then the Death Star appears on the horizon. Tarkin has showed up.
Yeah, it looming, just like in the horizon shot. Also very cool, very wallpaper-y worthy there. But also, my favorite shot in this movie. I've already talked about the other Death Star shots. All the best shots involve the Death Star in this movie. Okay. The one with Krennic looking up as he's about to die at the thing that his entire career was built on, looking back down on him, about to destroy him. Fucking amazing visual storytelling.
Would you say that he choked on his aspirations, Barrett?
Hey, Vader was right.
Anthony. 100%.
He kind of did. I will say, as they're coming down from the Citadel Tower, there was definitely, I remember hearing about, and I think they even talked about it. There was a shot in that elevator where Jin and Cassian kiss, and I'm glad that they took that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did not need to be romantic, and I'm glad that they decided, shoot it both ways, see how it feels.
Sure.
But I'm glad that they decided it didn't need that, because it really didn't. The two friends holding hands at the end of the world, knowing that they did the right thing, is so much more powerful to me than, and maybe we could have been space boyfriend and space girlfriend. And then, of course, we get Radis, who is just like, man, I can't believe they pulled it off. May the force be with you,
those crazy kids down there. Rest in peace, Rogue One.
Rogue One.
You were a real one.
Radis out.
I just want to the shot where they're all like, all right, we did the damn thing. Let's get the fuck out of here. My note here is I'm more sad about the rebel ship that crashed into Vader's ship than I am about the crew dying. There's hope that they can actually get away, and it's ripped away from us. They're about to go into hyperspace, and it just crashes into Vader's like it's nothing. That I think is more tragic storytelling about a group of people you don't even fucking know who's on that ship. And I'm
I do like that.
Even less character development.
I do like that. Because like Vader shows up and they're like, prepare for hyperspace, and they're just like, okay, we're prepared. Oh no, we just oh dear.
That's how you do that.
You see about like 30% of that fleet goes out before they get to jump, which is amazing. And then we get to the sequence that I think the majority of people say is their favorite part of this movie. I think most people will tell you that this is the scene that really sells Rogue One for them, and it's what they went to the theater for, which, no shade, because I think this is the first time in live action we see Vader the way he appears in our minds. Because when you think about original trilogy and fight choreography and stuff, it was very simplistic fight choreography. We also didn't have the extent of the force powers that we had, with the prequels and the sequels and the cartoons. There is something really amazing about seeing Vader wreck shop in a way that he always did in my head when I was a kid.
If this was a scene in and of by itself, or in a different movie that made more sense for Vader to be there, like even like not talking about its relation to the rest of the movie, this is the coolest scene in all of Star Wars. It's so frightening. It's like the power of just his lightsaber turning on in the dark, showing him and his entire just scary entity is so powerful. And just like the nonchalant where you see the background where he's got the guy force held up to the ceiling, just slashes him while he's still walking away. Oof, it is so fucking good. But here's my note.
Wait. I've got those background lights on my TV.
That's cool.
And the first thing I watched with those background lights on my TV was Sage. Sage, I think you were there that day.
I was.
You?
That's so cool.
Like
I haven't done that. I didn't have my backlight TV, my lights on for Rogue One. I should go back and watch that scene.
I was like,
Hugh put out stats that this is the most watched Hugh sync.
That's so awesome.
That there is.
So funny. That makes sense. Yeah. Like swing the lightsaber up. Like that's unmatched.
And I do love that he fights like original trilogy Vader fights. It's one hand, it's heavy slashes. There's none of the like acrobatic stuff. He's just very much like, I'm going to pull this, I'm going to throw this, I'm going to slice you in half. You have a little thing that I want. You better give it to me because I'm coming.
Yeah.
I'm coming for it.
Yeah.
All your stupid helmets, I'm coming.
But here's my problem.
What's your problem?
The end quickly shifts and moves on from the tragic end of these characters. What this movie was supposed to be about was this group of characters that come together, you fall in love with, and this is I've said this before, no shade, and a lot of people worked on this movie. There were a lot of rewrites, there were a lot of cuts, a lot of re-edits and stuff like that, a lot of reshoots. So I don't know like what the original intentions were for the ending of the scene. And, I'm a big dumb idiot who's never written a Star Wars before, so you have that. But my takeaway from this, if you felt confident enough with how you left your main characters at the end of a movie that's about these characters, you wouldn't quickly shift to a scene that diminishes the end of those characters. They I get the powerful I get the powerful hype that Darth Vader brings and them transitioning into episode 4, but there's a way to do that without leaving the emotional turmoil that you just left, again, like Halo Reach, where you get kind of the tease of the beginning of Halo 1 and you're like, holy shit, that's cool, but now I'm so sad because of everything we just lost. Whereas
So,
I feel like the
there a
way that
world-
they quickly transition to this, it's just like, it's diminishing, and I think it doesn't respect the characters.
Let me ask you this. Is there a world, do you think, where data gets transmitted, stuff gets sent, we see most of the crew die, we see that the Death Star's coming up, we see Vader, okay? We see the Death Star begin the laser, we see Vader go after the plans, lose the plans, then we see Jyn and Cassian. Do you think
But then how do we transition to Leia and saying it's hope?
We don't. Because we know she gets it.
And I almost get from a marketing perspective what this does as well, where she's like, we got hope, and then even I remember first week it came out, the first time I watched it, I was like, let's go home and watch episode 4. Like, I get that that's what they're trying to do, but again, even at the time when there was no streaming service where you could like get data and numbers of like, let's get everybody to subscribe to our streaming service to all watch episode 4 right now.
No, but can I tell you something about that last part? Because we're going to talk about CG Leia right now, but can I tell you about that last part?
Go on.
I know so many people, and there were tests. They did screen tests, and they did test audiences, and I've chatted with people who aren't big Star Wars fans. There are people that literally understood what was going on the moment they saw Leia. There are people, because remember, this is a $1 billion movie. There are people that kind of understood what was going on, and then when they saw Leia, they went, oh, this is right before the first one. And there were a lot of people that did that. And that ending with Leia is not just, hey, this is cool because like Leia's fucking cool. It's also cool because it did explain this to people.
I think you could have done it still with the shot of the ship that they're on.
Yeah.
I think if you had recreated the same shot that you see of that ship for the first time in episode 4, if you recreated that shot as they leave and escape Vader, I think you could have still done that without.
I'll even meet you in the middle. I'll even meet you in the middle on these, because I do understand that there is a non Star Wars fanatical audience that this has to appeal to, even though I don't think Rogue One did. I think Rogue One was really for the Star Wars boys, and I don't see a lot of people that are just like, yeah, I see Star Wars movies when they're around and my friends are seeing Star Wars movies being like, hell yeah, Rogue One. But that's besides the point. I'll meet you in the middle, and I'm going to say, just don't have her turn around. Just don't show her face. Just don't show her face. Have her receive it, see the hood, see the edges of the buns sticking out a little bit, hear the voice, and have her take the plan.
But Sage, what if we doubled down and brought back CG Leia for a little movie we like to call Rise of Rey Skywalker?
Just give me a close up on that mouth, because that's again the part where they've gotten the weirdest, and I don't know what it is with Star Wars
CG mouth do?
But that CG mouth is doing some weird shit that I do not like. That I think was a little tough. I think if you just showed from the back, it would have been a lot more tasteful, especially given Carrie Fisher. I just think.
Yes. But remember, we had not lost Carrie.
We hadn't lost Carrie Fisher yet, but even as respecting her as a living woman that gave like one of the most iconic
she gave her permission.
characters.
She had to give her permission.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying respect to the character that she built and the person that she is. It's not about permissions. It's not about her estate, and it's not about her being living. It's I don't think that is respectful to the iconic character that she made. Someone else wrote it, but goddamn is Carrie Fisher Leia, and I don't think you respect. Right. I don't think you respect her correctly by showing a CGI version of her that doesn't adequately look like her to tie it in. I think just a little back and a little nod to it would have been more respectful to her.
I feel the same way about it as I do about the Tarkin, which is like there's a more artful way to do it where it would have looked more natural and it could have been more natural. But
Lucasfilm,
bless their hearts, they wanted to see if they could make a digital people.
Yeah.
Bless their hearts.
I love it. To me, the Vader scene really Vader scene on makes this movie so much better to me, because to me this movie is about the promise of leading right into the beginning of A New Hope, and I think that they do that so well with this. I wish they didn't hang on her as long as they do. I'm with Sage. Even not seeing her face, I think would have went a long way. I like seeing her in general. Her lines about hope and all that, even the line itself, I don't think bad. I think it's her saying hope as if it means something and it's like a quotable line, and like the camera lingering on her. Don't like that. But seeing Vader be actually scary and all that, I think is great, because it backs up to me this movie is not about the characters. It is more about the plot. And I think it succeeds in that plot. And I think the Vader stuff is super awesome, of getting us from the Death Star, the plans of, okay, cool, the rebels have the stuff now. They know what their mission is. And that's where we see A New Hope take off.
That's so antithetical to Star Wars there. Like, that's so...
This one's different. It starts different.
I get that, but like Star Wars is about the characters, and once you start pushing aside your own main characters, like what the fuck are you doing at that point? Like, it's
Can I do a thought experiment? One thought experiment here. What would we have thought? You know, Vader is introduced midway through the movie. He says, "Man, Krennic, don't make me clean up this mess. You better fucking fix your shit, buddy." Is there a version of this where they were facing Vader on Scarif, and he was a little more involved with that thing? Is that something that could have been cooler?
I would hate that.
Yeah, I wouldn't want Vader to kill them, because I think that I like the way that they die. I just don't think it was built too well. I think the Vader scene could have worked somewhere in a re-edit where it's brought in beforehand. I don't know.
What about this? What about a movie where it's 2 hours of Darth Vader telling you that he loves you and then he kisses you?
Yeah.
But no, I agree. I don't think it should have been Darth Vader on that, because I think that a large portion of what the Empire does is have minions, right?
Yeah.
And have these like pillars of the Empire that uphold these like terrible genocidal standards for them, that are normal freaking people, that are not the supervillain. These are just normal people creating terror, right? And I think that that's powerful and it's important. And I think that seeing Vader rarely do the dirty work of those things and make those exceptions for Luke, make those exceptions for Leia, right? Like those exceptions where he gets more involved, or make it for Obi-Wan.
Or a zip drive that just came from Scarif.
Yeah.
I mean, that zip drive is the plans to his planet killer. So
that's true. That's true.
But you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to go kill the people that did it? No, I'm going to go get that freaking thing because you guys are so incompetent it went this far. Okay, he steps in at the end because they have failed on so many levels as the Empire up to this point. But I'm just going to go kill the kids who are fighting. Nah, that's not really his thing. He only wants to kill his kids.
That's true. That's true. So overall,
Rogue One, everybody.
Rogue One.
Some people like it. Some people don't like it.
Both valid.
It's Star Wars. You know what I mean?
I enjoy
Star Wars through and through.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's not up at I wouldn't say that it's up at my top Star Wars things.
Mm-hmm.
I do enjoy it. I think it's solid. I do think seeing more of these characters and learning more about them would have benefited us.
Yes.
I would have loved to have seen if there was a 3-hour cut. I would love to see more characters get these sort of prequel things. I think it's tough to get Donnie Yen. I think it's real tough to get Donnie Yen, but I'd love to see a Chirrut and Baze series.
You know what else I think is tough? Getting Donnie Yen and not utilizing him enough. In my, I did a whole Star Wars rewatch where I rewatched a bunch of movies, TV shows, comic books.
And
books.
11 of the 12 movies don't have Donnie Yen.
It's
He's severely underused.
And I ranked everything just for my own personal enjoyment. And Rogue One is pretty low. It's 20 out of 26 pieces of media of Star Wars things that I went through as a whole. So right below.
In terms of enjoyment, I think that there's some of the most rewatchable scenes in this movie. And I think as a movie overall, this is one I would rather rewatch over a lot.
I have it above Rise of Skywalker, so I'll give it that.
Sage, final thoughts on Star Wars Rogue One.
All Star Wars is fun, so all of my criticism throughout this is to compare it to the level that I love and appreciate Star Wars. It's a fun movie, it's an enjoyable movie, and there's a lot to love about it. And people who love it, it's so valid. I love that for you, truly. I'm glad I enjoyed it more this time. I still had fun watching it. Just justice for characters is something that's always going to be important to me. So this movie's never going to be for me because I'll always prefer caring about these people. And I think that's what Star Wars is for me, for the rebellion, for the hope. The hope is these people. What else are we hoping for? We don't care about necessarily the planets. We probably should, but we don't. We care about the people fighting to do what's right in it. So this one lands pretty low for me, but Star Wars is still cool.
Fair enough.
Let us know in the comments below what you think of Rogue One, where you would rank it in your overall Star Wars rankings, and anything else you want to let me know. What'd you have for lunch today? I want to see that. I want to see that in the
Yeah.
comments on this
Did you have a good
beautiful
lunch?
day. Let me know. Let me know.
I've been eating
Sage.
so many high chews.
Oh
You
my
have to
God.
stop,
You be
Anthony.
chewing it up.
What the hell, Carboni?
Sage, where can people
listen,
find you?
I got hit by a truck, and so people have been sending me things, and somebody sent me a 5-pound bag of high chews, and I've just been eating high chews.
You can find me showing up at Anthony's apartment, begging him to stop eating high chews twice this week.
Mhm.
And you can also find me everywhere on the internet at Not Sage. I stream on my channel as well as twitch.tv/Pixel Circus, where Anthony and I host a show together called It's Too Early, where we do gaming and pop culture news and honestly, just two besties shooting the shit. And there's a
Shoot
bunch
that
of stuff in
shit.
there. We do tabletop, we do D&D. It's fun. Check it out.
Carboni, what about you?
Yeah, I'm also there where Sage said, but in addition, I'm at A Carboni everywhere online except for on Twitch, where I'm at Anthony Carboni. Twitch, you cowards, it's mine, give it back to me. And I have a science comedy podcast with Jeff Kanata called We Have Concerns, where there are new episodes every Friday. So listen to that. It's good.
Hell yes. Like I said earlier, next week we're going to be doing Werewolf by Night, returning to MCU in review. But until next time, may the Force be with you.